Going on, guys? We are live on TikTok. We are live on YouTube. Thursday night football, Jaguars versus the Cincinnati Bengals. So much to talk about tonight. We are sure going to have a lot of questions to get answered. A lot of answers to those questions coming your way. What's good? I love the WalterPicks app. Thank you, Ben. Seriously, what a good first comment, man. I appreciate you for trying out the app. Seriously, it's the number one way you can support me. So I do appreciate that. Boyd or Woods at Flex W. I'm seeing, yes, sir. We are back live on YouTube and TikTok as always for the Thursday night game. Boyd versus Woods. Robert Woods is he's a tough guy to start right now in fantasy football. There's really no way around that. You kind of have to go Tyler Boyd just based off of Robert Woods' performances so far. Robert Woods really has been mostly a disappointment in fantasy football. And a lot of people, the majority of people, expected Robert Woods to be the number one receiver for the Rams to start the season over Cooper Kupp. That's certainly not how it has gone. It could easily change. I just think this week is not the week to be going with Robert Woods, especially when you consider the matchup for the Rams this week. It is a game I expect the Rams to win, and it could be high scoring against the Cardinals. The Cardinals secondary, though, continues to surprise me. They honestly have surprised me almost every single week with how good their secondary has played, all considering Malcolm Butler, their top corner before the season, like 2 weeks before the season, retired from the NFL. So I would probably go Tyler Boyd tonight against a really, really bad Jaguars secondary. I have picked against the Jaguars every single week. By the way, last week, A.J. Brown was the free prop pick of the day. He got hurt on his first snap of the game. Absolutely brutal for A.J. Brown in week 3. But if we're going to remove injuries from our record on the free player props, we're still 2-3. We're still 2-3. And I actually have a free player prop, 2 free player props up on Prize Picks right now. Do I start Robert Woods? A lot of people asking about Robert Woods. No, I don't think you should. I really think you should wait on the Robert Woods until we see him get consistent volume, because we have not seen consistent volume from Robert Woods really yet this entire season. And that is what I want to see from Robert Woods before inserting him into my lineups. That being said, he's up against the Arizona Cardinals in week 4. They've allowed the 11th most fantasy points to wide receivers. That's actually worse than I expected. I feel like just anecdotally watching the games, they've actually been better than I've expected. Nobody has had a huge day against this Cardinals defense. And not a single, only one player has gone over 18.5 fantasy points, and that was Justin Jefferson. So I don't think there's that high of a ceiling for Robert Woods this week, especially considering he really has not been getting enough targets to warrant any type of ceiling. He has 6 or fewer targets in 2 of his 3 games. In both those games, he only had 3 catches. He's got under 70 yards in all 3 games. What is the ceiling for Robert Woods this season? If that's what that's what it's gonna be like. All right, gonna answer as many questions as I can, of course, as always, on these live streams. And Andrew Early, man, how's it going? Thanks for tuning into the YouTube live. We're live on TikTok and YouTube right now. As always, on the YouTube live stream, you can see my top 10 running backs, top 10 wide receivers, top 10 quarterbacks, top 10 tight ends on the YouTube live. You can't see those on the TikTok live. TikTok does not have that feature. So come over to the YouTube live, guys. The link is in the TikTok bio. You're like 3 presses of your finger away from the YouTube live stream. All right, should I drop Rondale Moore for Laviska Shenault? This is an interesting one, Andrew, because they're really, really similar. They basically play the exact same role, both of them. All of their targets are right at the line of scrimmage. Neither of them is running very far down the field. They're both dynamic with the ball in their hand. But I would honestly like Rondale Moore a little bit more than Laviska Shenault. Rondale Moore is just on the better offense. So I like Rondale Moore a little bit more. I wouldn't drop him for Laviska Shenault, but I do think they're extremely, extremely similar. Taylor Heineke or Sam Darnold. I like Sam Darnold a lot this week. He's not in my top 10, but I think he's in my top 15. If I pull up my top 10 quarterbacks for the week really quickly, again, you can see those on the YouTube live. Link is in the TikTok bio for that. I will answer as many comments as I can, but a lot of times my top 10 rankings for each position can answer a lot of your questions, because if you see a guy in the top 10 that you're thinking about starting, you should probably start them. Sam Darnold's a guy that I like this week a lot. Sam Darnold really has balled out this season. This has been by far his best season. We're seeing the Adam Gase effect in full steam as expected. Sam Darnold has had by far the best year of his career, and he has a decent matchup this week as well. So I do like Sam Darnold heading into this week. I just traded Zeke for Najee. Good or bad trade? I think it's actually pretty fair. I actually have Najee Harris in my top 10 this week, and I don't have Ezekiel Elliott in my top 10 this week. But I think they're really similar options. Najee Harris is going to touch the ball more than Zeke this season. But Zeke's probably going to end up with more touchdowns. And Ezekiel Elliott's on the way, way, way better offense. The Cowboys, so far, looking very well on track to be top 5 in the league in points scored. That's a very good thing. Very good thing for Ezekiel Elliott. Najee Harris, though, I mean, man, what do you have? 11 catches, even more than that in week 3. Najee Harris is going to be a volume machine. This is exactly why we drafted Najee Harris. We knew he had a chance at 300 carries and 60-plus catches. He already is on pace to blow past 60-plus receptions this season. Just an insane receiving day. He had 14 catches for over 100 yards in week 3. That was, I think that might have been the most receptions of the week. Let me pull this up really quickly. I can pull this up. I'm pretty sure that is the most receptions of week 3. Let's take a quick look. He had 14, and yeah, that was the most receptions of week 3. It was actually 2 more than the next highest, Davante Adams. He had 2 more catches than Davante Adams. If you played against Najee Harris in a PPR league last week, you were just beside yourself, just watching dump off after dump off after dump off after dump off to Najee Harris. Sit or start DeAndre Hopkins. You have to start DeAndre Hopkins. Well, you have to. You have to. The guy that I think is much, much more concerning, and we set this rule early in the season. We honestly probably set it too early. Allen Robinson, man. Allen Robinson is just falling victim to his bad offense yet again. And it's just so sad to see for Allen Robinson. One of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I would still argue he's a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. There's just so little volume to go around for Chicago. Though it does seem like Laser is going to take over the offensive play calling in Chicago. And that is going to be a huge boost for that offense whenever that happens. And I think it could happen as soon as this week. Do I trade Amari Cooper? Also love the content. Anthony, this is not the time to trade Amari Cooper. Thanks, by the way, for enjoying the content. I appreciate you tuning in to this live. Everyone that's tuned in right now, thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate everyone who is tuned in right now. I wouldn't go trading away Amari Cooper right now, though. It feels like a bad time to do that. I would wait for another big week because there's more big weeks coming for Amari Cooper, and we should expect more consistency moving forward. Jack, thanks for the rose, man. I appreciate that. Thoughts on Nyheim Hines? Nyheim Hines is this year's James White. RIP James White, by the way. I hope this is not the end of James White as a Patriot. He's on the IR, done for the season now. But Nyheim Hines, guys, he's seeing very real volume, and he has very real value in PPR leagues. He has 12 catches so far this year. He's averaging 4 catches a game, but he's the 7th most targets among running backs this season, 5 targets a game. And we really have seen Carson Wentz continue the Phillip Rivers funnel passes to the running back. So maybe it was more of the Colts offense than it was Phillip Rivers in his final year. He's the 7th most targets, 7th most receiving yards, but he's getting carries too. He's averaging 5 carries and 5 targets a game. And he's getting about, a third of the work. Marlon Mack's also looking like he's out of Indianapolis. Good luck finding a trade partner for Marlon Mack, though. I thought that was such a weird storyline. Who's trading for Marlon Mack? He's coming off a torn Achilles. He really hasn't shown anything yet this season. Why does Marlon Mack think he's going to have this massive trade market? I thought that was pretty interesting. No, I do think maybe the Patriots are a decent spot for him. Jacobs or Chuba Hubbard? You can't bench Chuba Hubbard this week. Let me pull up my top 10 running backs again on the YouTube live. You can see my top 10 running backs scrolling at the bottom of the screen. I'm not positive Chuba Hubbard's on this list, but if he's not on this list, I don't think he is. If he's not on this list, he's a top 15 running back this week. You have to start Chuba Hubbard. It was the same thing with Mike Davis last season, backing up Christian McCaffrey. 80% of Christian McCaffrey, 75% of Christian McCaffrey is better than almost every other running back in the NFL from the fantasy football perspective. So yeah, you got to fire up Chuba Hubbard with a lot of confidence this week, definitely over Josh Jacobs, who's coming off an injury and still might not even play. Mike Davis or Damian Harris or Chubb. If this is Nick Chubb, I mean, definitely Nick Chubb. If it's Chuba Hubbard, it's also Chuba Hubbard. I think Chuba Hubbard's with 1B, so I'm assuming it's Nick Chubb. But yeah, I would definitely go Chubb there. All right. Hey, Sam, is A.J. Brown and Hunt for Justin Jefferson fair? I need to win, and I can't really wait for A.J. to heal. Yeah, Liam, it's fair. I would definitely prefer the A.J. Brown Kareem Hunt side. But if you need to win, it's a good time to trade away your injured players. It really is. Don't wait for the wins. By the way, we got a game tonight. It's the Jaguars versus the Bengals, the most Thursday night football game ever. You got to love having, by the way, if you have there's always these games every season. I say this is one of them. If you have even a single dollar, like even $1 wagered on the Jaguars or the Bengals or any bet at all tonight, then we would probably be friends. We would probably be friends if you even have a single dollar wagered on this game. Because, man, it's the Bengals versus the Jaguars, two teams that you just wouldn't be watching the full game if they were not on prime time. It's going to be a fun one. And I do expect the Bengals to win. But 7.5-point spread for the Jaguars tonight, I think I would take the points because the Jaguars absolutely could win this game. And I've been trashing on the Jaguars since the season began. But they could win this game. Trevor Lawrence has never lost this many games in a row in his whole life through high school, college. Obviously, the NFL, much different. Urban Meyer, very, very much not good at the whole coaching in the NFL thing. But I would take the Jaguars plus 7.5. I would take the Bengals to win the game, though, for sure. All right. I saw your TikTok. Is there any justification for starting Marvin Jones over Terry? Luke, I don't think there's a great justification for it. And I know I'm hyping up Marvin Jones tonight. I like Marvin Jones prop tonight over 65.5. I actually got it over 62.5 earlier today. PrizePicks noticed that we were hammering the 62.5, so they pushed it up a tiny bit. But I do like Marvin Jones tonight. Marvin Jones, he's gone over 55 receiving yards and 8 targets in all 3 of his games this season. That's the definition of consistency right there for Marvin Jones. But we know there's a good ceiling for Marvin Jones too. He's the 17th most air yards in the NFL. So not only is he getting very consistent volume, the most consistent volume for the Jaguars pass catchers, but he's also getting the valuable targets. It's not just the targets. Laviska Shenault gets just the targets. He's getting targets at the line of scrimmage. Marvin Jones is getting them deep down the field. All that being said, I would still probably go Terry McLaurin over Marvin Jones. But it is close. I think Marvin Jones is going to have a good game tonight. Jacoby Myers or Clyde. This is such a good week for Jacoby Myers. It really is, especially with N'Keal Harry kind of on the comeback. And I don't think N'Keal Harry is going to have a huge role for the Patriots. I think he really is just not a great fit for the Patriots. But he is coming back. And he probably is going to come back next week, not this week. And this week is the perfect week for the Patriots passing attack. I actually think Mac Jones is a pretty good streamer. This week, I think he could go for over 300 passing yards and a couple touchdowns against the Buccaneers. And Jacoby Myers is going to be a big part of that. So I do like Jacoby Myers a lot as well. Guys, if you're watching live on YouTube, if you're watching live on TikTok, smash the like button. We got a like button on TikTok now. And hit the like button on YouTube. We are going to be live right up for like the next hour and a half. So thanks for tuning in. I'm going to try to get to as many questions as I can. We're going to talk about my expectations for this game. Again, if you're wagering even $1 on the Bengals or Jaguars game, then we would probably be friends. When is the app coming to Android? This is the question of the day, man. And this is a question I'm excited to answer today because we have made a little bit of progress on this in the last few days. I can't give you an official date because my developers get very angry when I give official dates for the Android launch, but it's coming, man. I promise it's coming, and it's going to come this season. I can almost guarantee we will have it this NFL season. And my goal from the beginning has been to get it out by week 5. Looks like that might be closer to week 6 or week 7, but it's coming, man. And I can't wait for it to be out. I know the Android people, you've been very patient. Devonta Smith or Allen Robinson. It's so tough to be starting Allen Robinson week 4. He's done absolutely nothing for us so far this season. You probably have started him 3 straight weeks. Any Allen Robinson that I drafted, I for sure have started him 3 consecutive weeks. Because he really has never had 3 straight bad weeks. But the situation somehow, some way, the situation has gotten worse for Allen Robinson this season. And he's gone under 11 fantasy points all 3 weeks. And he has 2 weeks under 7 targets, which just does not happen. You look at last season, and he had 3 games all season under 7 targets. He's already done that twice this season. So do I think he's going to turn it around? Yeah, he's definitely going to turn it around. But he's against the Lions this week. You probably want to be starting Allen Robinson again. I honestly would probably go Allen Robinson. It's not going to feel good. And I like Devonta Smith a lot this week too. I do. But I would probably lean Allen Robinson. I think Devonta Smith probably has the higher ceiling though. All right. Evening, Sam. Just traded Cooks for A.J. Brown. Thoughts? Alex, this is a great trade, especially if you are doing well so far this season. I actually just posted a video. I think it's under review. I don't even know if it's posted yet. It's probably going to post at some point during this live stream. But if you're 3-0 or you're 2-1 in your fantasy football league, these are the exact types of trades you got to be making. You got to think ahead. If you're already in like top 3 position in your fantasy football league, you want to plan ahead. You want to make sure you have the best possible team for the playoffs. Once you feel like you have a good chance at making the fantasy football playoffs, you got to focus your entire mindset on the playoffs. And A.J. Brown is doing exactly that, right? He's not going to be playing this week. He might not play next week, but he's going to be back by the fantasy football playoffs. Same thing goes for Michael Thomas. He's another really good guy to target. I just posted a video about this and a bunch of other players that I would be targeting if I was 3-0 or 2-1 in my fantasy leagues, which I am. In 2 of my leagues, I'm 3-0. In 3 of them, I'm 2-1. In the other one, I think I'm 1-2. I'm not 0-3 in any league, which is a good start. You gotta love getting that out of the way. All right. I liked the stream. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, smash the like button, guys. Smash the subscribe button. I do appreciate that. We are live on TikTok and YouTube right now. And on YouTube Live, you can see my top 10 running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends. And you can't see that on TikTok. So come to the YouTube live stream. The link is in the TikTok bio. Smash the like button. I like the stream. I do appreciate that, Andrew. All right, we got a start 3 situation. Chris Godwin, McLaren, Brandon Cooks, Deontay Johnson, and Cortland Sutton. Yeah, Deontay Johnson practiced in full this week, so it looks like he is coming back. Brandon Cooks has been extremely consistent. I would not be benching Chris Godwin this week at all. You definitely got to start Chris Godwin. I think you absolutely have to start Cortland Sutton too. So I really think the question comes down to Brandon Cooks versus Deontay Johnson. And that really is a close one for me this week. I would probably lean towards Brandon Cooks. I mean, Brandon Cooks, guys, has been way, way, way more consistent than anyone expected heading into this season. He has been putting up very, very consistent numbers. If I pull up the numbers really quickly, Brandon Cooks is averaging over 20 points a game. He's gotten over 18 fantasy points 3 consecutive games. And he has at least 7 targets in all of them. 10 over 10 targets in 2 of them. He's gone over 75 yards in all 3. I mean, Brandon Cooks is just dominating. Buffalo Bills, though, they have allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to receivers this season. It's close. It is definitely close, but I personally would be going with Brandon Cooks here. The Green Bay Packers also have been pretty good against receivers this year. All right, getting back to tonight, I think that Marvin Jones is probably my favorite prop of the night, over 66.5 receiving yards. You can use the code Walter if you haven't signed up for PrizePicks yet. You'll get 100% deposit bonus. Sutton or Ridley, you still can't be benching Ridley. You just can't. You don't want Ridley on your bench for his blow-up week, and the blow-up week's coming. It really is. The volume is there for Calvin Ridley. The passing down the field is not there for Matt Ryan. By the way, Julio Jones was right. I mean, you can't argue against Julio Jones at this point. Julio Jones was definitely right. Matt Ryan's absolutely losing his deep ball a little bit. You look at the numbers, even just last season compared to this season, he's throwing it like 50% less down the field than he was a season ago. I would love your opinion. Traded Damian Harris for Cortland Sutton. What do you think? Yeah, it's a fantastic trade. I mean, Damian Harris, I'm nervous about him. I don't know how you couldn't be nervous about Damian Harris heading into week 4. He saw really good volume the first 2 weeks, and then just a massive drop-off last week. They really started to go away from Damian Harris much more than they did in the first 2 weeks. You just look at the game logs for Damian Harris. Week 1, 23 carries. Week 2, 16 carries. Week 3, only 6 carries. He played less than a third of the snaps against the Saints, and it wasn't a great matchup against the Saints for Damian Harris. He was definitely a must-bench last week, but I still expected him to get more than 6 carries. So that could definitely turn around, especially with the James White injury. But it's definitely a concern for Damian Harris. And Cortland Sutton's just dominating with Jerry Jeudy out. Do I trade away James Robinson for Chris Carson? Or would I try to trade him away, if at all? Yeah, I would definitely take Chris Carson over James Robinson. I'm nervous about James Robinson, though we did know the James Robinson comeback game was going to come. I mean, he and you're going to see it tonight too. He's very involved, more so than he was actually in the first week. But Carlos Hyde is lingering, man, and Carlos Hyde is going to be lingering all season long, and that's not good for James Robinson. So I definitely would not prefer him in that situation. I just saw a question in the TikTok chat: James Robinson or Jonathan Taylor? It's Jonathan Taylor. I know Jonathan Taylor is running behind a weak offensive line, a very, very injured offensive line. But guys, the touchdowns are going to come for Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is still one of the most talented running backs in the league. I actually think he's one of my favorite buy low targets right now because he has the second most red zone touches in the NFL. Only one player has touched the ball more in the red zone than Jonathan Taylor. But Jonathan Taylor has 0 touchdowns. So that's going to change. It really is. And he's seeing pretty similar volume to what he saw a season ago. So I still think Jonathan Taylor will bounce back. The offensive line will only get healthier over the course of the season. I'm buying low on Jonathan Taylor, and I'm definitely starting him this week over James Robinson. All right. Start Marvin Jones or Deontay Johnson? Yeah, this one's easy. Definitely Marvin Jones. I would go Chuba Hubbard over James Robinson as well. Chuba Hubbard, guys, he's a top 15 running back this week. 75% of Christian McCaffrey is better than almost every single running back in fantasy football. That's how good Christian McCaffrey is. That's how good the Panthers system is for running backs. You want to start Chuba Hubbard this week. Definitely. Start Antonio Gibson. Yeah, you should probably start Antonio Gibson against the Falcons. I mean, it's the Falcons. The Falcons can't defend anyone. Hurts or Herbert this week? Yeah, let me pull up my top 10 quarterbacks. We get this question every single week, Les, and it hasn't been an easy answer in any single week. And last week I said Jalen Hurts. This week I'm going with Justin Herbert. He's one spot ahead of him this week. Jalen Hurts has a pretty good matchup against the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense really is the big weakness of the team. But more concerning for Jalen Hurts is the offensive line for the Eagles. It feels like every single season we do this with Eagles, and their offensive line just gets decimated year after year after year. It's brutal. I mean, the Eagles really did have a good offensive line heading into the season. They're without at least two starters heading into this game now, and the backups are not looking good. So I'm nervous for Jalen Hurts against the Chiefs, where really the front seven for the Chiefs is the strength of the team. Their secondary is really not that strong. All right, getting back to some of the questions in the chat. By the way, guys, if you haven't tried out the WalterPicks app in the iOS App Store yet, you got to try it out. It is completely free to download. You want to try out any of the premium features, you get a completely free 7-day trial. It's going to help you with your start-sit decisions. It can actually answer almost every single question I'm seeing in the chat right now. The WalterPicks app in the iOS App Store can help you answer. And it's going to help you make optimal start-sit decisions, dominate your trades with the trade analyzer. It's going to help you dominate your draft next season. It's also going to help you dominate DraftKings and Fanduel and player props. We're going to have multiple player props every single Sunday. We have one tonight as well. And on top of all of that, we have single slate DFS coming to the WalterPicks app really soon. So that's going to help you dominate DraftKings and FanDuel Thursday nights, Sunday nights, Monday nights, and all through the NFL playoffs. All right, let's get to a few more questions. Take out Cooper or Lockett for Marvin Jones. No, I wouldn't do it. And I like Marvin Jones a lot tonight. I like him to go over 65.5 receiving yards. Won't be surprised if he scores a touchdown. But I'm not gonna sub out Cooper or Lockett for Marvin Jones. All right, Boyd or Hubbard. It's got to be Chuba Hubbard, man. You can't be benching Chuba Hubbard this week. Again, 75% of Christian McCaffrey is better than 100% of almost every other running back. So you got to go Chuba Hubbard. What do you think about Mike Davis and Cordarrelle Patterson? I know, man, the Mike Davis-Cordarrelle Patterson situation has been even more fun than I could have possibly hoped for. And if you've been following me all offseason, I did 500 best ball drafts. It's actually embarrassing just to say out loud. I did 500 best ball drafts before the NFL season. And I drafted Cordarrelle Patterson in 33% of those drafts. I had thousands of dollars risked on Cordarrelle Patterson. I was taking him in the last round. Cordarrelle Patterson, among running backs, through the first 3 weeks of the season, he has the third most receiving yards. He has 2 touchdowns, too, which ranks 7th among running backs. He's the 9th most targets for the 3rd most receiving yards. He's dominating through the air. But he's also getting 7 carries, 5 targets a game, 12 opportunities a game for Cordarrelle Patterson. Absolutely amazing. But it's really not impacting Mike Davis as much as you would expect, because Mike Davis is actually still top 15. Let me pull this up. Top 15. I think even better than that in weighted opportunities per game. Mike Davis has actually seen a lot of good volume. Let me pull this up. I pulled up the wrong. I didn't know there was a wide receiver, Mike Davis, undrafted in 2014. I do like Mike Davis actually a little bit more than I think I expected, especially given how much Cordarrelle Patterson has been involved. Yeah, he's 7th in weighted opportunities still. I mean, he's still playing 64% of the snaps, which is probably less than the majority of people who drafted Mike Davis were expecting. But he is actually still very involved in the receiving game, and he's obviously been involved in the running game. The problem for the Falcons is they're just not going to have that many leads. So Mike Davis seems actually like a pretty safe floor option. He's gone over 10 fantasy points in all 3 weeks. But the ceiling is it's really not that high, especially with splitting the work with Patterson. Patterson has a higher ceiling because he has a better receiving outlook every single week. Tim Patrick, Emmanuel Sanders, or Corey Davis, pick one. I love this. I love to see this. By the way, we locked in Emmanuel Sanders was a lock last week. We talked about him on the Sunday Live. He was in the WalterPicks app as a player prop. And by the way, Walter is I think 2 for 2 with his locks this week. Saquon Barkley over receiving yards lock last week. Saquon Barkley is back. Saquon Barkley was the lock of last week, and we knew it. And it was against the Falcons. We just knew it was going to happen. This week, though, I really, really like Corey Davis. I mean, Corey Davis, first of all, it's a hashtag revenge game for Corey Davis this week against the Titans, where he previously played. And Corey Davis is the Titans secondary really has not been good. They haven't been good at all this season. If you take a look at how they performed as a secondary, they have struggled. They've allowed the third most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. On top of that, Elijah Moore dealing with an injury. He actually looks right at the current moment. If I had to guess, it looks like he's not playing. He's not practicing right now. Is Elijah Moore. And Denzel Mims has been absolute nothing. We've already seen lots of receivers dominate the Titans. We saw Christian Kirk put up 24 fantasy points. We saw Tyler Lockett put up 34 fantasy points. We saw Freddie Swain put up 22 fantasy points. And just a week ago, we saw both Michael Pittman did pretty well. He went for 68 receiving yards, he had 12 targets. And Zach Pascal did okay as well. I do like Corey Davis this week, definitely over Emmanuel Sanders and Tim Patrick. Hey, Sam, who should I be getting for Jamar Chase? Yeah, Jamar Chase is a pretty good sell high candidate. He hasn't seen the volume that we expected. But T. Higgins is out again. So Jamar Chase is probably going to continue to have a lot of value in fantasy football. I don't know if he fits so many reasons to trade high for me, except for the fact that the volume's probably going to increase as the season goes on. If we assume that he's going to keep the same volume, that there's no way he can keep up the sufficiency. He's had really not that many targets. He's had 7 or less. He's had 7 or fewer targets in almost every single game this season. I'll say that again. I know. Sorry, I glitched out on the TikTok live. Jamar Chase has had 7 or less targets in all 3 of his games, but he's scoring touchdowns. He has 4 touchdowns through his first 3 games. He's scored a touchdown in every single game this season. And I mean, that just can't continue. There's no way he can be this efficient in the touchdown column. But more importantly, though, for Jamar Chase, the type of targets he's seeing make him more valuable. He has the 5th highest air yard share in the NFL. That's the percentage of air yards for the Bengals. He has the 24th most air yards in the NFL. He's seeing deep targets. He's seeing over 1 deep target a game. And really, it's close to 2. So with the touchdown upside and just the deep targets he sees, he's also he's running routes on every single pass play for the Bengals. He just really does not come off the field unless they're running the ball. You got to like Jamar Chase, I think, a little bit more than you would think, given the volume that he's seen. Because if the volume increases for Jamar Chase, he could be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. That's how good Jamar Chase has looked. Talk about the overreactions, by the way, in the preseason for Jamar Chase. The man has not dropped a single pass. Claypool, Sutton, or Chuba Hubbard. This one's a little bit more difficult. I would still probably go Chuba Hubbard, though. The thing about Chuba Hubbard is the floor. The floor for Chuba Hubbard is just so high in week 4. Like the floor, he's going to go over 10 fantasy points. This is the role he's playing for the Panthers. The Panthers running backs get peppered with targets. So in a good matchup this week against the Dallas Cowboys, who they actually have done pretty good against running backs. Seems like they're much better against the run than the pass. But we already saw Austin Eckler put up over 20 fantasy points against them. And we saw Kenny Gainwell and Miles Sanders both see 4 targets last week. 8 targets towards the Dallas Cowboys defense in week 3. 10 targets, against them in week 2, and 7 targets against them in week 1, all to the running backs. We're going to see Chuba Hubbard get a lot of targets again in week 4. So I think the floor is just so high for Chuba Hubbard. Top 10 wide receivers. Yeah, let me pull up the top 10 wide receivers on the YouTube Live. Again, we're live on TikTok and YouTube right now. And on the YouTube Live, you can see my top 10 wide receivers, top 10 running backs, top 10 quarterbacks, top 10 tight ends. You can't see those on the TikTok Live, so link is in the bio. Smash the like button, guys. Hit the subscribe button. We're well on our way, by the way, to 10,000 YouTube subscribers by the end of the season. We started the season with 3,000. We're over 4,000 already. So smash the subscribe button. I do appreciate that. We're trying to get to 10K this season. Tyler Boyd or Corey Davis. Yeah, I would probably go with Corey Davis. It is close, though. Again, T. Higgins is out, and that is a big, big upgrade for Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase. The Jaguars have been okay against receivers, but part of the reason is they just get destroyed, and so the other team runs the ball so much. This is going to be a big Joe Mixon game. I'd like Joe Mixon to go over 85 yards tonight, as you can see on the TikTok live. But I think that Tyler Boyd is probably going to go over 10 fantasy points. I mean, almost every receiver that's gone up against this team has gone over 10 fantasy points. Brandon Cooks, Danny Amendola, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, all have gone over 10 fantasy points. So, I mean, he's a lock to get 10 plus. So he's a pretty safe play. I think Corey Davis, though, does have a higher ceiling. I really do. I think Corey Davis has a really high ceiling this week in a hashtag revenge game against the Titans. No Elijah Moore. Yeah, I think this could be the Jets' first win of the season. I actually think the Jets have a pretty decent chance to upset the Titans this week. No A.J. Brown. The Titans' offensive line is really decimated right now, too. Amari Cooper or Antonio Brown long term. Yeah, it's got to be Amari Cooper over Antonio Brown long term, 100%. Amari Cooper almost has to bounce back. The thing about week 3 for the Cowboys, they just didn't have to throw the ball that much. They were in the lead so early on that they just did not need to throw the ball very often. So I would bet on Amari Cooper bouncing back. I think Amari Cooper's a really good buy low candidate right now. Hey man, who do I start here? Ravi, how's it going, man? James Robinson, Chuba Hubbard, Devonta Smith. If it's a PPR league, I'd probably go with Chuba Hubbard and Devonta Smith. I think Chuba Hubbard is the lock out of these three. I like Devonta Smith a lot this week too. I really think like the Chiefs are going to put up so many points against the Eagles that the Eagles are going to have to throw the ball, similar to what they had to do against the Cowboys last week. And I mean, the thing to me about this Chiefs-Eagles game, the Chiefs are 1-2. They're last in their division. They can't lose this game. This is a must-win game for the Chiefs. And the Chiefs show up for must-win games. The Chiefs are a lock to win this game. I would be absolutely shocked if the Chiefs lost this game and it started the season 1-3. And the Chiefs have given up the 10th most points to receivers this season. They've really been torched by wide receivers this season. We've seen so many different receivers go over 19 fantasy points. There's been 4 different wide receivers go over 19 fantasy points against the Chiefs. Jarvis Landry did it. Marquise Brown did it. We saw last week Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I mean, you got to fire up Devonta Smith with some confidence. Devonta Smith, guys, is also a really good buy low candidate right now. He has really seen very valuable deep targets and has just missed on a bunch of them. And when those connect, he's going to have massive weeks. He's honestly, to me, not that much different than a guy like Tyler Lockett or like Stephon Diggs. That's the type of player Devonta Smith is, and we're seeing it with the air yards. He has a massive air yard share for the Eagles. He is over 300 air yards through the start of the season, and he's really seeing very consistent deep targets. He's had at least 6 targets in all 3 of his games. I like Devonta Smith a lot this week against the Chiefs. I have smashed the like button. Thank you, man. Ayuk, Ruggs, or Javonte. Man, Ruggs has been surprisingly good this season. I would probably go with Ruggs. I would ride the hot hand there. All right. Jacoby Myers or Kareem Hunt at flex. Sorry, I think I clicked on the wrong comment. Sorry if I didn't. I'm sorry if I pulled your comment up on YouTube and I didn't answer. Jacoby Myers, Kareem Hunt at flex, 1 point PPR. I know Kareem Hunt's been on an absolute tear recently, scoring touchdown after touchdown. I would go Jacoby Myers though. Again, I think Jacoby Myers is such a good option against the Buccaneers. It's going to be a high-scoring game, and the Patriots are going to have to throw the ball in this game. All right, Tyler Boyd or Jacoby Myers? I would go Jacoby Myers over Tyler Boyd. I would. Again, T. Higgins being out, it's good for Tyler Boyd. The Jaguars really secondary is nothing to be scared of, but because the Jaguars are so bad, the Bengals are going to be able to run the ball a lot, just like every other team has. And we got to talk about Joe Mixon for a second. We have to talk about Joe Mixon for at least 1 second here because, man, was any guy hated on more heading into the season than Joe Mixon? Because this is the year for Joe Mixon. We've said this for the last 3 years, but it's true. This season, Giovanni Bernard, gone, and he has not left the field for the Bengals. He has 80% snap share. That's the 3rd highest in the league. He has the 2nd most carries in the NFL, only behind Derrick Henry. And he's producing with those carries. He's the 2nd most rushing yards in the NFL, only behind Derrick Henry. He's averaging 95 yards a game. And after tonight, it won't be surprising if Joe Mixon is averaging over 200 rushing yards a game. That's how good Joe Mixon has been. But on top of the rushing is the receiving. He's seeing over 2 targets a game. He's running a lot of routes, top 15 in the NFL among running backs and routes run. So you got to love Joe Mixon, and you got to love him tonight against a very, very beatable Jaguars defense. I mean, Joe Mixon is going to be one of many running backs this season to destroy the Jaguars, who are allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to running backs. We saw Mark Ingram rush for 85 yards against the Jaguars in week 1. We saw Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon combined for over 90 yards in week 2. And then in week 3, James Conner scored twice. So, yeah, you got to love Joe Mixon, and you got to be firing up Joe Mixon with confidence tonight. Herbert or Stafford? Yeah, I think I have them both in my top 10 quarterbacks. Again, we're live on TikTok and YouTube, and you can see in the YouTube Live my top 10 rankings for each position. If I pull up my quarterbacks again really quickly, I believe Herbert was like a few spots ahead of Matthew Stafford. You got to love what we've seen. Yeah, he is. What we've seen out of both these guys, especially Matthew Stafford. I think the Rams, by the way, should be the favorite for the Super Bowl right now. They're not. The Chiefs are actually still favored to win the Super Bowl right now. They're 1-2 though. And I think the Rams are going to be very, very, very difficult for every single team in the NFL to beat with their combination of defense and offense. And part of that is the upgrade from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford, just like we expected. I would go Justin Herbert, though. Justin Herbert is, I think, in a slightly better matchup this week. I can pull it up really quickly again. But Justin Herbert is, he's up against the Raiders, man. And the Raiders have actually been okay against running quarterbacks. They've actually been good on defense, like much better than expected. But the Chargers and Justin Herbert, I mean, it doesn't really matter who they're playing. They did really well against Washington. He went over 300 yards. He's gotten almost over 300 yards in every single game this season. I would go with Justin Herbert. It is close, and I understand wanting to start Stafford after what he did a week ago. But personally, I'd be going with Justin Herbert there. Yeah, Matthew Stafford's up against the Cardinals. Definitely a better matchup. But the Cardinals also have actually done pretty well against quarterbacks in fantasy football. A lot of that, though, was week 1 when they just destroyed the Titans. All right, Marvin Jones or Chuba Hubbard? I'd go Chuba Hubbard there, too. I think Chuba Hubbard's a must-start. Honestly, I thought I put him in that video. I might not have. Guys that I just really want to start this week. Zach Moss, Tim Patrick, AB, Michael Carter, or Kenyon Drake at flex. Man, what is up with Zach Moss? He's a healthy scratch week 1, and then week 2, all of a sudden, he's just getting a massive, massive workload, and he is like all of a sudden just scoring touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. He's so involved with the Bills offense all of a sudden after being healthy scratch in week 1. I still would not go with him in this situation, though. I'd probably go Antonio Brown. And, man, you cannot get Michael Carter anywhere near your starting lineups yet. He's been seeing increased work, but you got to get Michael Carter as far away from your fantasy rosters as you possibly can because it's the Jets, and you don't want the Jets running back who's in a committee running back for the worst offense in the NFL or one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Yeah, Zach Moss, 3 touchdowns in 2 games. Insane. He's got 3 touchdowns, 2 games. He's played over 50% of the snaps last week. He saw the most carries in the backfield, and he's seen at least 2 targets in each game too. He went 90 yards and a touchdown last week. He's gotten over 15 points back-to-back weeks, and I'm still not going to pick him in this situation. I'm still going to go Antonio Brown because Antonio Brown just has a way higher ceiling. And they have similar floors, Andrew. I really think Zach Moss and Antonio Brown, the floor is probably a little higher for Zach Moss just because he plays running back. He's like locked into at least 10 touches. But the floor for Zach Moss is still below 5 points, just like it is for Antonio Brown. Corey Davis, Robert Woods, or Miles Sanders. Yeah, Robert Woods is just a guy you can't trust in your lineup until we see more consistent volume. This has been the thing for Robert Woods his whole career. He's seen consistent volume. That's not what he's seeing this season. I would go Corey Davis over Robert Woods. I don't think I would go. Miles Sanders also really tough, man. He got so phased out last week in a game that the Eagles had to throw a lot, and it's going to be the same thing this week against the Chiefs. So I would probably go Corey Davis again. Hashtag revenge game for Corey Davis. Chuba Hubbard. I'm seeing another Chuba Hubbard question in the YouTube chat. Let me see if I can scroll back up to this one. Or Scary Terry. That one's close, man. I do really think Chuba Hubbard is the safer play. I think Terry McLaurin is the higher ceiling, though. Waller or Ridley? Waller and Ridley for Devontae Adams. No, definitely keep Darren Waller and Calvin Ridley. Darren Waller, you could argue Darren Waller is more valuable than Devontae Adams in fantasy football. Then you add in Calvin Ridley. You're selling way too low on Calvin Ridley if you're selling him. All right. I see Yarjma in the chat, man. How is it going? It's going great, Yarjma. I am in the great state of Florida right now and enjoying the sun. And I can't wait for week 4, man. Week 3 actually went really well. Outside of the A.J. Brown injury, which was brutal because he was the free prop pick of the day on Sunday. But we hit both of our locks against the spread. Titans -5.5 lock. Cardinals -7.5 lock, although that was not a pretty game on either side. But both locks hit in week 3, and we have continued to have success with the player props in the WalterPicks app. So, Yarjma, I'm doing well, man. I really am. I'm enjoying life. I'm pumped to be on the live. I can't wait to watch the Jaguars versus the Bengals, just an all-time Thursday night matchup. Answer me. Braden, the funniest part about these questions, man, is I always see these comments, but I don't actually see your previous comment. So now I can't answer your comment because I don't know what it was. All right, Corey Davis or Mike Evans in flex. Teresa, how's it going? I would go with Mike Evans over Corey Davis in the flex. I do think that Tom Brady is going to destroy the Patriots. It's going to be so tough to watch for me as a Patriots fan. But and as much as I like Corey Davis this week, Mike Evans has really turned it around the last couple of games. Antonio Brown's going to be back. I still would go Mike Evans, though, over Corey Davis. I think Mike Evans has the higher ceiling. And the reason you're playing Corey Davis is the ceiling. So Mike Evans is the guy I would go with. All right. Ayuk or Antonio Brown. Brandon Ayuk of the Bazooka. He finally returned last week. It was great to see. He was seeing targets. He scored a touchdown. It was amazing. I was so excited for Ayuk the Bazooka. We knew the talent was there. It was very surprising to see it not be utilized the first couple of weeks of the season. If you held on to him, good job, because he finally saw an 86% snap share week 3. That was under 60% each of the first 2 weeks. He ran 39 routes. That was more than double what he ran in the first 2 weeks combined. And he turned his 6 targets into almost 15 fantasy points because he scored a touchdown. So I'm pumped to see him back. All that being said, again, I don't think you want to bench Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, or Chris Godwin this week. At least 2 of those guys is going to go off. So don't bench anything. Don't bench Antonio Brown. Don't bench Chris Godwin. And do not bench Mike Evans. Hey, Sam, should I start Zeke and Jamar? Should I trade Zeke and Jamar for Najee and Cooper? Yeah, you definitely should. What is the big difference between Zeke and Najee this season? The big difference is that Zeke is on a much better offense. He's on a much better offense, and that's good for fantasy football. But Najee Harris is going to see probably more volume than Zeke, and that's just as important in fantasy football. You could argue it's more important. Volume is king at the running back position. Najee Harris had the most targets in the NFL in week 4. He had the most receptions week 3. And Amari Cooper's better than Jamar Chase, hands down, 100%, even though he hasn't done as well in the last 2 weeks. So I like the trade. I think you're a good buy low trade right there. Hey, should I start Deebo Samuel, Deontay, or Mike Evans again? I like Mike Evans this week. I would not start Deontay Johnson coming off the injury. In this situation when you have other good options, Deebo Samuel's been balling out. He didn't have as good of a week in week 3. He balled out the first 2 weeks. I think he was leading the league in receiving yards after the first 2 weeks of the season. After the first 3 weeks of the season, just based on how good he did the first 2 weeks, he's still second most receiving yards in the NFL. And he only had 52 yards last week. That's how good his first 2 weeks were. I don't think you really want to be benching Deebo Samuel, but if there's anyone that you're going to bench him for, it's Mike Evans. Again, the Patriots have not been very good against the run, against the pass this season. They really haven't been good just in general on defense. So I expect Mike Evans and Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin all to have pretty good days in week 4. The Patriots, they've given up the 5th fewest points to receivers this season. But then you go look at the matchups they've had. They played the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Saints. They've played nobody. Really, it's really, really bad sign for the Patriots that they're 1-3. They played 3 probably bottom 10 teams in the NFL, especially when you look at the passing attacks that they went up against. And it's not going to be the case in week 4. So, yeah, I would probably lean Mike Evans, but I want to start Deebo Samuel too. It's definitely close. Need some prize picks. Adam Cray, man, how's it going? On the TikTok live, I got my prize picks that I'm rocking with tonight. And it is Joe Mixon, over 85.5 rushing yards, and Marvin Jones, over 65.5 rushing yards. Remember, if you are new to prize picks, it's an app on the iOS App Store and the Android App Store that is the best place to place props. They have the best lines for player props, and we have a partnership with them too. So if you've never deposited on prize picks before, use the code Walter, WALTER, when you sign up, and you'll get 100% deposit bonus. All right. That's what I'm going with tonight, though. Joe Mixon, over rushing yards. Marvin Jones, over receiving yards. Been a day. Traded away Latavius Murray for Gaskin, non-PPR. Thanks. Keep up the grind. Holden, love to hear that, man. You got to keep up the grind as well, because winning a fantasy football championship really is a grind. It's usually the person that grinds the most that has the best chance to win the fantasy football league. Yo, Sam, could you pick 2 between Carson, Mixon, Swift? Yes, the last 2. It has to be the last 2. And I like Chris Carson, Yarjuma, but Joe Mixon is going to just dominate the Jaguars. Horrible run defense tonight. Again, I was just reading the numbers about the Jaguars defense, but no, they haven't stopped a single running back this whole season, and it's not going to stop tonight. Joe Mixon has seen the second most rushing yards, second most carries in the NFL, both only behind King Derrick Henry. Joe Mixon, without Giovanni Bernard, is on the field the 3rd most in the NFL among all running backs. He's just not coming off the field. So you got to start him. And then DeAndre Swift, especially if this is a PPR league, Yarjma, DeAndre Swift, if you guys saw that report today from the head coach of the Lions saying that DeAndre Swift's going to see more of the ball, that was a weird comment. I don't know why he would see more of the ball just like randomly. It seems like he's already seeing a lot of the ball. He's seeing a lot of volume through the air. He's seen, I think, the second most targets in the NFL so far. I can pull this up again. I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing there. But the target volume that DeAndre Swift's seeing is really like very few players are seeing the type of, second most targets. That was right. Second most targets in the NFL. He's the most receiving yards, actually. I think it's only behind Christian McCaffrey, too, who missed a game. So, a very, very good sign for DeAndre Swift. And in PPR leagues, you got to keep playing. He's seen actually the 11th highest snap share, too. He's splitting work with Jamal Williams, just like we expected. But he's seeing almost 18 opportunities a game. He's top 5 in weighted opportunities. This is exactly why we drafted DeAndre Swift. Everyone was bashing on DeAndre Swift. Oh, the Lions. Lions aren't good. DeAndre Swift injury prone. Jamal Williams is going to be involved. All of those things are true. And meanwhile, it's week 4. DeAndre Swift has the 3rd most fantasy points among running backs in PPR leagues because that's how much targets matter. And we were drafting DeAndre Swift because we thought he could get 60 catches. And he's on track to come closer to 100 catches than 60. Hey, Sam, should I trade Amari Cooper and Hines for Metcalf? Yeah, I would. I would do that one. I like Metcalf a lot more than Amari Cooper right now. And if you're not going to be starting Nyheim Hines, one of my favorite things to do in trades is to try to trade one of my starters and one of my good bench players for a better starter. That's exactly what you're doing here. Dak or Stafford. I would probably go Dak. Again, I have my top 10 quarterbacks below me right now. Dak Prescott is 3 spots ahead of Matt Stafford. Dak Prescott's really just like he's cooking on all cylinders right now. You really do want to be starting Dak almost every single week, regardless of matchup. Who should I start? Hines, Chubb, Moss, Drake, or Gibson? Hines, Chubb, Moss, Drake, or Gibson? Chubb. It's got to be Nick Chubb. You can't be benching Nick Chubb. I know he didn't score a touchdown last week, and he kind of needs a touchdown to have a good fantasy day because he's a 0 in the receiving column. Nick Chubb's still probably the most efficient running back in the NFL, though. And on the Browns are up against a Minnesota Vikings defense that really has not been great against running backs this season. Nick Chubb, to me, is an auto lock into your lineups every single week. The Vikings have given up the 17th most fantasy points per game to running backs this season, but they've allowed a lot on the ground. Joe Mixon went over 120 rushing yards on them, and Chris Carson went over 80 rushing yards on them as well. So I do like Nick Chubb a lot this week. Hey, Sam, how is it going? Ruggs, Sutton, Marvin Jones. Love the channel. Oren, thank you, man. Yeah, guys, hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. If you're watching live on YouTube, smash subscribe, smash like. If you're watching live on TikTok, there's a like button on TikTok now. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Hit the like button on TikTok. And if you're not following us on TikTok yet, I don't know what you are waiting for, man. Hit that follow button. I do appreciate that. Mike Davis or Darrell Henderson. Yeah, I would go Darrell Henderson, even though I'm nervous about him coming back off the injury. I don't love Mike Davis this week. Ruggs, Sutton, Marvin Jones. Yeah, I would go Sutton in this situation. I think Sutton's just too good. He's too good for not be in your starting lineup. I've been commenting for 30 minutes now, and you finally clicked on my comment just to not answer my question. Holden, man, I'm sorry. Trade away Latavius Murray for Gaskin on non-PPR. Oh, I thought you said you now I understand. Holden, I misinterpreted your first comment. I thought you said you were grinding by doing this trade. Holden, I like the trade, man. Latavius Murray is a 0. He has 0 fantasy value. Myles Gaskin has very little fantasy value too, but it's better than 0. So, yeah, I would do that trade for sure. How do you feel about Deontay Johnson? Yeah, Deontay Johnson is the clear top receiver for the Steelers. He was all of last season, and he still is this season. But the value of his targets aren't that great. We know that Big Ben is struggling, and he really looks like a shell of his former self. So the volume is going to be there for Deontay Johnson, but the value in fantasy might not be there as much. I still think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be a wide receiver too. I think Chase Claypool could easily end with more fantasy points than him because Chase Claypool, though he's seeing less targets, his targets are way, way, way further down the field. But still, Deontay Johnson's gone over 14 fantasy points in his first 2 games, and neither of those games were against easy defenses by any means. So I would still be going with Deontay Johnson as a pretty safe wide receiver too moving forward. Should I start Odell or Shepard? Yeah, if Shepard plays, I would still go Odell. Jake, Odell Beckham Jr. looked really good in his first game. It was really exciting to see him out there. And with no Jarvis Landry, even though the Browns spread the ball out more than most teams in the NFL, and they actually do have a really good receiving room to do that. I talked about that with Browns.WalterPicks before the season, just how deep the receiving room is for the Browns. It's really deep. But he's got 9 targets, 77 yards in his first game, and he really played 65. He still only played 65% of the snaps. And that's going to go up over time as he gets more acclimated to coming off the injury. So, yeah, I would probably go Odell over Shepard. It is kind of close, though. All right. Getting back to the game tonight. I got to talk a little bit about the game tonight. And we haven't talked at all about the 2 quarterbacks playing tonight. Bengals versus Jaguars, the rivalry of the century. Joe Burrow, first overall pick versus Trevor Lawrence, first overall pick. Both teams are really, like, the Bengals have surprised most people this season. The Jaguars have surprised most people this season in the opposite direction. But Joe Burrow and the Bengals are 7.5-point favorites in the game. Joe Burrow really has not thrown very much this season. You look at 2020, he was averaging 40 pass attempts per game. That was, I think, second most in the NFL on a per game basis. This season, that's all the way down to 25 pass attempts a game. Joe Burrow throwing 15 less passes per game than he was a season ago. And it's working for the Bengals to be a run-first team because they're so efficient passing the ball. He's the 9th most yards per attempt. He's actually second in clean pocket completion percentage, though he doesn't get very many throws from a clean pocket because the Bengals' offensive line, really has not been that great. But what's working for Joe Burrow is the deep ball efficiency to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins when he's healthy. Joe Burrow has really looked like a first overall pick this season, though he's not throwing the ball nearly as much as Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence has been good and bad at times this season, but he's throwing the ball very deep down the field. Trevor Lawrence actually has a higher ceiling than Joe Burrow in this game. Trevor Lawrence has thrown, I think, 400 more air yards in the same amount of games than Joe Burrow. He's averaging 343 air yards a game. There's a really high ceiling for Trevor Lawrence every game. They're going to be getting crushed in most games this season. I actually think the Jaguars could win this game. And this might be one of the few games I say this about this whole season. I mean, Urban Meyer on a short week is not something I want to bet on. I don't want to bet on Urban Meyer and the Jaguars team in general this season. But it feels like this Thursday night game where people are very, very optimistic about the Bengals right now and very, very down on the Jaguars. 7.5-point underdogs. I think the Jaguars cover the spread. I actually won't be shocked if they win the game. And the reason that they have a chance to win the game is Trevor Lawrence, who's pushing the ball down the field. So I won't be shocked if they do win. So I am going to take the Bengals to win. All right. The Bengals defense, though, to me is the most surprising thing about the Bengals team this season. I did not expect them to be even remotely good this year. They weren't really remotely good last year, but then you look at the numbers that they've put up so far, and you got to be pretty impressed so far from the Bengals defense. They've really stopped most of the teams that they have gone up against, and they have won most of their games so far. What are they? 2-1, I believe, so far this season. Let me pull this up really quickly. Yeah, they're 2-1 so far this season. So I mean, they've done better than certainly I expected, and I think the majority of the public expected heading into this season. And I think that they're going to be 3-1 after the first 4 weeks of the season. They beat the Steelers, the Vikings, and they're probably going to be the Jaguars tonight. All right, going to get back to week 2. Yeah, my bad. I think this is week 4. I just didn't change. Let me see this. Didn't change the week number here. Thank you for catching that. I think I did that on tight ends maybe too. All right. Getting back to the comments, though, I will try to answer as many comments as I can. How do you feel about CEH? Yes, finally someone asked about Clyde Edwards-Helaire after he has a good week. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was an obvious buy low candidate after the first 2 weeks of the season. He was seeing consistent volume despite his fumble issues, and we saw the same thing in week 4. He really has had issues on a lot of different plays, and the Chiefs just continue to go back to him because he's clearly better than Darrell Williams. And we're 3 weeks into the season now. He's the 9th highest opportunity share. He's seeing over 3/4 of the opportunities, that's carries and targets, for the best offense in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a running back 1 ceiling every single week, and he's going to have a running back 2 floor every single week. And we saw it in week 3, 17 fantasy points against a pretty good Chargers defense. He had 17 carries, 2 targets, another 19 opportunities for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And there's going to be games for the Chiefs. You got to understand this. And there hasn't been these games yet, but there's going to be games where the Chiefs just absolutely destroy teams. And that's going to be amazing for Clyde. So I think he's a running back 2 with running back 1 ceiling for every week moving forward. All right. CD or Scary Terry? Definitely CD Lamb. Hey, Sam, longtime subscriber here. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Guys, the number one way you can support me, by the way, is to subscribe in the WalterPicks app. The number 2 way, though, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's completely free, so I appreciate either one. Should I trade OBJ for A.J. Brown? A.J. didn't practice again today. Yeah, if you're 2-1 or 3-0, it's the perfect time to trade for A.J. Brown. I would do that trade. I know he's probably not going to play this week, A.J. Brown. He might not play next week either. But he's going to be back. And when he comes back, we should expect very similar things out of A.J. Brown. There's even a chance he lands on the IR. That wouldn't be that shocking. All right, Boyd or Kareem Hunt? I'd probably go with Tyler Boyd in this situation. I know I like Kareem Hunt. He's been good. But to me, Boyd is safer than Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt actually has a pretty low floor. I think it's a high ceiling, but low floor. And Tyler Boyd has a really good floor. Tyler Boyd's a lock to go over 10 points tonight. He's gone over 10 points in almost every single game, over the last 10 games that he's played. And he is up against the Jaguars defense where every single receiver that's gone up against them has gone over 10 points. So Tyler Boyd's really safe. I don't think the ceiling's that high, but he's a really safe option. And, I mean, Kareem Hunt, he's going to play less than 40% of the snaps for the Browns. He's seeing, close to 15 opportunities a game because he's seeing pretty consistent targets, but I don't love him in week 4 against the Vikings. I think it could be a big Nick Chubb game as well. All right, should I start Tyreek Hill? Yes, of course you should start Tyreek Hill. That's an easy one, man. Thanks for giving me that layup. Guys, we are live on TikTok right now. We are live on YouTube. I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I possibly can. Chase or CEH at flex. I would probably go with Clyde over Chase. It's close. It is close. I just think that the Chiefs could completely destroy the Eagles this week. It's a must-win game for the Chiefs. The Chiefs don't lose must-win games. So I would probably lean Clyde. I know that Jamar Chase is a good matchup tonight against the Jaguars. Again, they haven't stopped very many receivers, but the Eagles also haven't stopped very many running backs. And the Eagles' offensive line is so decimated, it would be pretty surprising if the Chiefs don't have a sizable lead at some point in this game. We saw Zeke just score multiple touchdowns against the Eagles defense. And we saw Mike Davis and Cordarrelle Patterson. They combined for over 100 yards week 1. We saw the 49ers combined for almost 100 yards in week 2. And then Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard combined for over 150 yards in week 3. So you got to go with Clyde. You got to have a lot of confidence in Clyde this week. He's way underpriced on DraftKings and FanDuel again this week. And he was a lock last week. Please answer. How is it going, Caden? Saquon, Zach Moss, Henderson. Yeah, Saquon, he's back. Saquon is back. Saquon was the lock of week 3, and it came through. He went over 20 fantasy points, and he's going to be a lock every single week moving forward. You got to be trusting Saquon Barkley in your starting lineup every week from here on out. We've seen back-to-back weeks now. He's looking fully healthy, and the volume is only going up. He played 83% of the snaps. He had 16 carries, 7 targets. He went over 90 total yards and a touchdown, over 20 fantasy points. Week 3, I know it was against the Falcons. He is not going to get to play the Falcons every single week. But with that volume and 7 targets is the most exciting part. You have to lock in Saquon Barkley every single week moving forward. All right, guys, if you want to dominate DraftKings and you want to dominate on FanDuel, especially if you're just getting started, the WalterPicks app can help you out. You're going to get a completely free 7-day trial. It's in the iOS App Store. I've spent tens of thousands of hours building this app. It leverages machine learning and artificial intelligence to help you dominate DraftKings, FanDuel, player props, and your start-sit decisions. Matt R. Sam, Bengals minus 7.5. No, I don't like the Bengals minus 7.5. I expect the Bengals to win, but I think this game could be closer than people think. Trevor Lawrence they're really allowing him to push the ball downfield. That's the one thing I like about the Jaguars. But it's Thursday night, man. It's the Bengals. It's the Jaguars. Would you be that shocked? And I know the Jaguars are really bad, and I'm certainly not picking the Jaguars. 7.5 points is a lot, though, in the NFL, and I think the Jaguars have a legitimate chance to win. So I don't like the Bengals minus 7.5, though I do see the appeal. I mean, the Bengals should destroy a really bad team. All right. Trade cancels in 2 hours. Keenan Allen for Amari Cooper and Devontae Parker. Yeah, I would do this one. I would. I'm actually a little nervous about Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's been consistent, but he's been worse than Mike Williams. And Amari Cooper hasn't been consistent, but he probably will be. Like, they're probably not that much different. I think Amari Cooper, though, weekly has a higher ceiling than Keenan Allen. It's close. Devontae Parker is kind of worthless to me. I don't like if you're going to be starting Devontae Parker, definitely do this trade. If you're not going to be starting him, just know you're getting kind of a more volatile version of Keenan Allen. Higher ceiling, lower floor. than Keenan Allen. But they're both wide receiver 1 still for the rest of the season. How about this one? Hunt, Edmonds, Sanders, or Moss? Yeah, this one's definitely more difficult. I don't think you can trust Miles Sanders in your lineup at all right now. I mean, he saw less than 10 opportunities last week. And in a game where they got blown out, they're probably going to get blown out again this week against the Chiefs, which leaves Kareem Hunt, Chase Edmonds. I definitely wouldn't be starting Zach Moss over either of them. I like Chase Edmonds a lot in PPR formats, but I'd probably honestly lean Kareem Hunt over Chase Edmonds this week. I know that the Cardinals game could end up being really high scoring, as you know a lot of their games go. But Chase Edmonds against the Rams, I would probably go with Kareem Hunt instead in this situation. I don't love playing anyone against the Rams. James Robinson or DeAndre Swift? Definitely DeAndre Swift. Guys, you have to start DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is top 10 in fantasy points per game this season. He has the second most targets, second most receiving yards. He is not like coming off the field in passing situations. They're really funneling the ball to DeAndre Swift. So you got to keep firing away with DeAndre Swift. Hey, Sam, should I start CEH, Sutton, or Antonio Brown this week? Yeah, to me, this one's between CEH and Cortland Sutton. And I like all the Buccaneers receivers this week. Antonio Brown, #revenge game, technically, for the 10 days Antonio Brown was on the Patriots a few seasons ago. But Sutton is seeing too many air yards to be benched right now. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I do really like him against the Eagles. Like, to me, he's the safest floor out of all three of these guys for sure. I think Sutton has the higher ceiling. But what is the ceiling that much different? Again, the Eagles, they're allowing 9th most fantasy points per game to running backs. Their offensive line is decimated, which is the strength of the Chiefs' defense is their defensive line. And it's a must-win game for the Chiefs. They're 1-2. So all of the stars are aligning for the Chiefs to blow out the Eagles this week. And if that happens, it's probably going to be a big Clyde game. Should I trade Clyde and Waddle for Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, and Shenault? No, definitely not. You're giving up the best player in the trade. And honestly, Waddle saw 12 targets last week. So this is not the time to trade Jalen Waddle. Should I be worried about Antonio Gibson? Yeah, you probably should be. Rate this team. I don't do the rate team thing, Shizuto. I'm sorry. It just takes too long to rate your team. And I need more information to fully rate teams. Like, I need to know the scoring format, how many teams in the league. Max R, man, how's it going? Chark or Waddle? I'd probably go with Chark over Waddle this week. I know that Waddle's been great, but DJ Chark is seeing a lot of deep targets down the field. I expect the Bengals to have a lead in this game, so I would probably risk it with DJ Chark over Jalen Waddle. And you got to love playing someone on Thursday night as well. Hey, Sam, should I be worried about Gibson? Yeah, I addressed this briefly. I am a little bit worried about Antonio Gibson. I actually traded in one of my leagues Antonio Gibson for Nick Chubb, and I drafted Antonio Gibson ahead of Nick Chubb. So I kind of took the L a little bit in that league because I'm very, very fine changing my opinions on players as we get more information. I think that you're doing it wrong if you're not adjusting to new information. And the new information we have about Antonio Gibson really isn't that great. He's involved in the passing game a little bit, but he's coming off the field on third downs. He has had a 60% snap share or less in 2 straight weeks. And Washington's offense isn't quite as good as we were hoping for. That being said, he's gone over 70 yards in every game. He scored a big receiving touchdown last week, but he really isn't running that many routes. He's still seeing at least 2 targets in every game. I am a little worried, though. I mean, J.D. McKissic really is stealing so much of his upside. What's the ceiling for Antonio Gibson if he's only seeing 2 targets a game and 12 carries a game? It's just not enough upside. He only has 3 red zone carries to start the season. 3 red zone touches, period. So that part's a little concerning. But overall, I think he's still going to be a running back 2 with weekly running back 1 upside. I'm just a little nervous about the ceiling that we thought Antonio Gibson had. It feels like his ceiling's lower than we expected. All right. Is this a good trade? Gibson, A.J. Dillon, either Sermon or Mitchell for Swift. Yeah, it's a good trade. I actually do think it's a good trade. A.J. Dillon and Sermon or Mitchell, they're both not really fantasy football relevant at the moment. I do think Mitchell is the guy I would prefer to keep. I think Mitchell's going to play over Sermon. We saw week 1 they wanted to play Mitchell over Sermon for the 49ers. But Swift is better than Gibson by like a very, very sizable amount, especially if this is a PPR league. So don't hate the trade. And you know I love getting the best player in the trade. Hey, Sam, Bucks D or Bengals D this week? It's Bengals. I'll D. It's got to be Bengals. I think the Patriots are probably going to get destroyed by the Buccaneers, but I actually think Mac Jones is going to have a good game. And I think he's a better chance of having a good game than the Jaguars offense has a good chance this week. The Bengals defense has been surprisingly good. And I know I just said I think the Jaguars have a chance to win this game. I do. Trevor Lawrence has been pushing the ball down the field. But Trevor Lawrence pushing the ball down the field is really a double-edged sword. That's why he's thrown so many interceptions. I think Trevor Lawrence, by the way, is going to be really frustrating, and it's going to be really interesting this season to see who wins Rookie of the Year because Trevor Lawrence is going to have the most passing yards. He has almost 700 passing yards through the first 3 games, and he's going to continue to put up passing yards with how deep he's throwing the ball and how frequently he's throwing the ball. But he is throwing a lot of interceptions as well. Let me pull up the interception numbers here. He has, if I can find this quickly, 17 interceptable passes as charted by playerprofiler.com, which ranks 46th in the NFL. That's not good. That's not good. You don't want to rank low in that one. So he really is going to throw a ton of interceptions. So I would probably go with the Bengals. All right. Chuba Hubbard, Mike Evans, Josh Jacobs, or James Robinson at flex. Man, I don't think I would go James Robinson or Josh Jacobs. It's between Mike Evans and Chuba Hubbard. I think Evans has the higher ceiling. Chuba Hubbard definitely has the higher floor. Chuba Hubbard's a lock for 10-plus fantasy points. He's a really, really safe floor. I'd probably go with him. Cooks, AB, Devontae Smith. You can't be benching Brandon Cooks, guys. You just can't do it yet. You can't. He's gotten over 15 fantasy points every single game. He's the only receiver that the team has. So you got to go with Brandon Cooks. All right. Amari Cooper, Nyheim Hines, Jacoby Myers, even though Richard Sherman is on him. Richard Sherman, guys, is almost 34 years old, and he wasn't good the last time he played. I'm not scared of Richard Sherman. If anything, that's just a really, really, really bad sign for the Buccaneers secondary. I know it's Richard Sherman, but the guy hasn't played football in a while, and even the last time he played, he wasn't very good. I would still be going Jacoby Myers with confidence this week, though I would prefer Amari Cooper over Jacoby Myers still. I would go Amari Cooper here, Joel. But don't be scared of Jacoby Myers because of Richard Sherman. If anything, that's actually a good thing for Jacoby Myers this week. Saquon or Zeke? That's a close one, man. I would probably go with Saquon. Saquon, 7 targets last week, 83% snap share. I liked what I saw out of Zeke, too, and we knew the touchdown ceiling was there for Zeke. It's exactly why you drafted Zeke. It's exactly why you got to keep Zeke. I feel like you got to try to start both these guys, though. Your team's probably stacked if you can't start both Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley. Hey, Sam, who should I trade, Brady or Hurts? I'm trying to get DJ Moore. Definitely Brady. It's definitely Brady. Brady's a really good guy to trade away right now. Tom Brady is a good player to trade away because he doesn't have the rushing volume that you want in your fantasy football quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts does. You look at the quarterback scoring so far this season, and Tom Brady is up there in fantasy points. He has the second most fantasy points in the NFL, but most of that is coming through insane touchdown efficiency. He has 10 passing touchdowns this season. Jalen Hurts, though, he has 20 less fantasy points than Tom Brady, but he has thrown half the amount of passing touchdowns. He's thrown 5 passing touchdowns, but he's like 5 points off in fantasy points per game from Tom Brady. And Tom Brady's not going to be able to throw 4 passing touchdowns a game. So I would probably trade Brady. Though Brady's ceiling is like we know, super high. The Buccaneers, again, they're going to be top in the league in fantasy in deep attempts per game, which is great for Tom Brady. And it was pretty encouraging to see Brady throw for 400 yards against the Rams. I mean, the Rams are going to be the toughest defense he plays all season. They're both good. I think Brady has a higher weekly ceiling, but I would argue Jalen Hurts is the higher weekly floor. So I would say that I would personally go with trading away Tom Brady. And I bet you can get more for Tom Brady than you could for Jalen Hurts. Should I start Gronk or Tunyon even after Gronk? Yeah, you got to go Gronk. Gronk, hashtag revenge game against the Patriots. You got to go Gronk. Gronk's been too good to bench for Tunyon, who really has done nothing so far this season. Sam, what's the deal? Let me see. Hurts, Herbert, or Lamar? You got to go with Lamar. You can't bench Lamar. I know Lamar's back is hurting because he's carried the Ravens on his back through the first 3 weeks of the season. But I'll pull up my quarterbacks really quick for this week. You definitely cannot be benching Lamar Jackson. He's my number 4 ranked quarterback. Again, every week. We've seen this every week. You can't bench Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, or Lamar Jackson. Don't bench any of those guys. Tyler Boyd, Mike Davis at the flex PPR. Yeah, it's Tyler Boyd over Mike Davis 100% for me. Drop Shenault to pick up. Who are you picking up? Kirk. It's close, man. Kirk has done way, way, way better than I expected he would do this season. It's pretty surprising that Rondale Moore has done this well, and Christian Kirk has still thrived this season. Christian Kirk, 17 fantasy points per game so far this season. He's gone over 15 points in 2 out of his 3 games. But I wouldn't do that. I still think Shenault's probably going to end up with more targets each week than Christian Kirk. So I'd probably keep Shenault rather than Christian Kirk. All right. Getting back to some of the YouTube comments. Guys, we're live on TikTok and YouTube right now. On YouTube, you can see my top 10 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and a lot more. So you got to come to the YouTube live. It's also the chat is just a little less spammy. I'm going to answer questions from both, though. I do appreciate everyone in both. Will Sully, man, how's it going? Start Bengals D tonight. Yeah, Will Sully, you got to start Bengals D tonight. True OG, man. I do appreciate your support. Yeah, I would go Bengals D tonight against the Jaguars. Again, I actually think the Jaguars have a chance to win this game, and I would take the Jaguars plus 7.5, but it's the Jaguars, and they've been one of the worst offenses in the NFL, one of the worst teams in the NFL so far this season. Urban Meyer, just looks totally out of his league this season, in his first NFL season. So, yeah, Will Sullivan on the YouTube chat as well. Yeah, start Bengals D tonight, man. Start Bengals D tonight. What's the RB situation in Vegas this week? Yeah, I mean, Josh Jacobs has been out the last couple of weeks. It does feel like he's returning this week. That's not confirmed yet in the injuries for these running backs. Don't ever feel good about the injuries for the running backs because they tend to linger. It's the most injury-prone position in sports. Like Christian McCaffrey, this injury could linger. They don't want to rush back running backs, because when you rush them back, it actually prolongs the issue. So Josh Jacobs played only 50% of the snaps in week 1. He picked up an injury. He still scored 17 fantasy points because he scored twice. But he's not going to have that touchdown efficiency this season. Like the Raiders, I don't think will be able to score that many rushing touchdowns this year. But the offensive line has surprised me. The entire Raiders team, offense and defense, has surprised me. But I'm expecting Kenyon Drake to play the Kenyon Drake role. And he's going to play the receiver role for the Raiders offense. But Peyton Barber is the direct backup for Josh Jacobs. So he's going to continue to be involved too if Josh Jacobs is out. But if Josh Jacobs is back, he's probably going to play again 50% of the snaps. Number 1 trade target. There's a lot of guys that I would like to trade for right now. I posted a video about this, I think, every week on TikTok. I posted it a couple days ago on TikTok, at WalterPicks on TikTok. You can check it out. But one of the guys that I think is a very intriguing trade target right now, and I'm honestly not sure if I put him in that trade video, is Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers is the clear wide receiver 1 for the Patriots. And I think starting this week, this could be the last week to go acquire Jacoby Myers for pretty cheap. Red Craft, thanks for the gifts on the TikTok live, man. I do appreciate that. Try to answer your question if I see one. But I do think Jacoby Myers is about to have a big week against the Buccaneers. I'm not nervous about Richard Sherman. I'm really not nervous about Richard Sherman at all. Brandon Cooks, CEH, or Robinson. I would probably go Brandon Cooks, then CEH, then Robinson. I like Clyde to have the higher floor over Brandon Cooks, but Brandon Cooks has been really consistent, man. It's hard to bench Brandon Cooks right now. But going back to the Jacoby Myers trade target, man, 3rd most high snaps in the slot in the NFL. He has barely come off the field for the Patriots, 95% of the snaps. But unlike most slot players in the NFL, Jacoby Myers is actually seeing deep targets. He's seen the 5th most deep targets in the NFL. He's averaging 2 a game so far, and he's the 7th most unrealized air yards, which means he's leaving a lot of air yards on the table, a lot of opportunity that he has not capitalized on yet, that he will capitalize on. And all that being said, he's still gone over 10 fantasy points in 2 of his 3 games. He went for 18.4 points last game, 9 catches, 94 yards. And these are the type of games Jacoby Myers is going to have. You got to love Jacoby Myers right now, and I think his value is only going up. Chuba Hubbard, Mike Evans, Josh Jacobs, James Robinson at flex. It's Chuba Hubbard or it's Mike Evans. I think I actually already answered this one or something similar, Jay. I think Mike Evans has the higher ceiling. Chuba Hubbard has such a good floor, though, and I would probably go Chuba Hubbard. Keenan Allen or A.J. Brown rest of the season. It's got to be Keenan Allen. And with the injury to A.J. Brown, it's got to be Keenan Allen. If there's no injury to A.J. Brown, I would say A.J. Brown. I think by fantasy football playoff time, it's probably A.J. Brown. But right now, rest of the season, I don't know how you could say A.J. Brown over Keenan Allen. I'm seeing a Noah Font or Kyle Pitts question in the chat. Man, Kyle Pitts is such an interesting option in fantasy right now. I think he's another guy you have to consider trading for him. You really have to. If you don't have, by the way, we absolutely nailed our tight end strategy this season. And there was lots of hits, lots of misses for me this year in fantasy football drafts. But really the biggest hit of all was the whole tight end strategy. I was happily taking Travis Kelce in the 1st round. I was gladly taking Darren Waller back into the 2nd, beginning of the 3rd round. But my prime strategy at tight end was just wait until the 5th or 6th round and take TJ Hawkinson. And I was glad they're taking Kyle Pitts in the 4th round too. And I think if you did take Kyle Pitts, you should keep him. Do not sell low because there's a lot of really, really good peripheral numbers for Kyle Pitts. And it's been pretty clear defenses have been locking him down. Part of the reason for that is the Falcons have no real number 2 wide receiver. So they're putting their number 2 cornerback on the Falcons tight end, Kyle Pitts. But if you don't have TJ Hawkinson or Darren Waller or Travis Kelce or George Kittle or Noah Fant. Noah Fant is a guy I would actually play over Kyle Pitts, at least this week. But I would still take Kyle Pitts for the rest of the season over Noah Fant. And Kyle Pitts to me is like the last of that tier of all those guys we just mentioned. I actually like Kyle Pitts more than Mark Andrews rest of the season. I think Kyle Pitts is the number 1 trade target for tight ends right now. If you don't have a good tight end, which is like half of the teams in all of fantasy football, go get Kyle Pitts. He's run the 2nd most routes among tight ends. He still has the 7th most targets among tight ends. And he is seeing the 2nd highest percentage of air yards among tight ends. He's seeing more than George Kittle. He's seeing more than Noah Fant, more than Mark Andrews. He's even seeing more than Darren Waller in terms of air yard share, maybe more than Travis Kelce. I got to double check that. So Kyle Pitts is going to have good games, guys. He's going to. And he only saw 3 targets last week. That's probably going to be the fewest targets he sees all season. His first 2 games, he saw 14 targets combined. I think he's going to have big weeks. He's definitely going to score touchdowns. I think Kyle Pitts will bounce back. Honestly, the biggest concern for Kyle Pitts is Matt Ryan. But Kyle Pitts is going to be fine, and I think you should be buying low. Should I try to sell high on Mike Williams for Diggs? Yeah, if you can get stuff on Diggs, definitely. Definitely that's the perfect situation to be selling high on Mike Williams. Stephon Diggs is going to be better than Mike Williams the rest of the season. Just got Diggs for Allen and Shepard. How you feel about that? That is absolutely amazing. That's an amazing trade. I guess Stephon Diggs, I think he was on my trade targets as well. If he wasn't, he should have been. Stephon Diggs, another amazing trade target. All the peripheral numbers are there for Stephon Diggs. Guys, Stephon Diggs is still a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football. And he hasn't performed like that so far this season, but it's coming. And it's going to come very soon. He has the most air yards in the NFL. He has the 3rd most deep targets in the NFL, the 4th most targets in the NFL. If you wanted to see my top 5 receivers for the rest of the season, just go look at air yards and targets. And you see Stephon Diggs ranks top 5 in both. You got to have Stephon Diggs in your top 5 wide receivers for the rest of the season. And this week, you look at my top 5 wide receivers, and there's Stephon Diggs ranked right at number 4. And I think Mike Williams isn't even on my top 10 still. I like Mike Williams. He's been balling out. But he's not better than Stephon Diggs. And he's not even seeing close to the volume Stephon Diggs has seen. So, yeah, go get Stephon Diggs. He has the most air yards and the 2nd most targets, 4th most targets, in the NFL. He's not coming off the field for one of the most pass-heavy teams in the NFL. He's at least 8 targets in all 3 games. He has only scored 1 touchdown. Touchdowns were coming by the truckload for him last season. You got to go get Stephon Diggs if you're going to get him for that cheap, for sure. That's a fantastic trade, man. All right, Pittman or Devonta Smith at flex. I would go Devonta Smith. I would. I like Pittman. Paris Campbell looks like he's coming back, though. We saw the floor for Pittman in week 1. I think he had like 3 fantasy points that week. And Devonta Smith's floor is really similar, but the ceiling is higher for Devonta Smith, especially in what could be really a shootout game against the Chiefs. Marvin Jones or Godwin? And definitely Godwin. I like Marvin Jones a lot. Again, I'm locking in Marvin Jones over 65.5 receiving yards tonight. I like Joe Mixon over 85.5 yards as well. If you're going to try out Prize Picks, guys, use the code WALTER, WALTER, for a 100% deposit bonus. But yeah, I do like Marvin Jones this week, but definitely not more than Chris Godwin. Marvin Jones or Jamar Chase? I would probably go with Marvin Jones over Jamar Chase, but man, is it close. And there's no T. Higgins tonight. There's no T. Higgins. And that matters a lot for Jamar Chase because the thing about Jamar Chase, he's been so efficient. He scored 4 touchdowns through 3 games. So honestly, I think I changed my mind. I would probably go Jamar Chase. With no T. Higgins, I'd probably go Jamar Chase. If T. Higgins was playing, though, I'd definitely go Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones or Jacoby Myers. Man, that's a good one, too. I like Jacoby Myers a ton this week. I do. And I see a question about Jacoby Myers in the chat on YouTube as well. And Jacoby Myers, he's a smash play this week. And really for the rest of the season, I think he's a really good buy low target. I'd probably go Jacoby Myers over Marvin Jones tonight. And I think Marvin Jones is going to have a good game, and you're probably going to feel bad about it, but then you're going to see Jacoby Myers just ball out. Again, Jacoby Myers, he really is playing a very unique role for the Patriots, a role that we have not really seen in the NFL that much before. He's run the third most slot snaps in the NFL. He's seeing 60% of his snaps from the slot, but he's still playing a deep threat role. This is like what we saw out of Julian Edelman too. Julian Edelman was a dominant slot player, but he would really run deep routes all the time. And this is exactly the role we're seeing for Jakobi Meyers. He has the 5th most deep targets in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. And against the Buccaneers we know for sure are going to put up points against the Patriots defense that has looked pretty average so far to start the season. So I would definitely go with Jakobi Meyers. DJ Moore, Terry, week 4, definitely DJ Moore. You got to lock in DJ Moore this week, 100%. I have a trade offer that I'm doing. I would get Nick Chubb and give the guy CEH and Julio Jones. I would sell Jamar Chase as my wide receiver 2 and Javonte Williams as my flex. Yeah, I don't hate the trade. And you're getting the best player, which I do like. Julio Jones is also a guy that I'm really nervous about. He was on my you should trade away list on my post, I think today or yesterday. So yeah, I like the trade. Julio Jones, I'm super nervous about Julio Jones. That thing that you can only be nervous about Julio Jones for, it's not his play, it's not his talent, it's his injuries in his legs, in his hamstrings, and the fact that he's being held out of practice. He's only playing 50% of the snaps when AJ Brown's out. I mean, it's just not what you were hoping for out of Julio Jones this early in the season. And he sat out most of the preseason too with injury. So yeah, I like the trade, man. You're getting Nick Chubb. I actually just traded for Nick Chubb in one of my leagues as well. I think he's a great trade target right now after a pretty down week. Nick Chubb's still the most efficient running back in the NFL, and Nick Chubb's going to have 100-plus rushing yards, 2+ touchdown days all the time this season, and we shouldn't be surprised about that at all. The Browns' offensive line, arguably top 3 in the NFL so far through the first 3 weeks. They've actually been pretty healthy through the first 3 weeks as well. And Nick Chubb, 3rd most rushing yards in the NFL. Not that surprising. He's got one of the highest yards per carries in the NFL. Not that surprising. So, yeah, Nick Chubb's just such a safe bet. He's such a safe bet. Any players coming back for injury who I should be keeping an eye out for? Yeah, I just posted a video about this on TikTok. I actually don't know if it's posted yet. It was under review for a little while. But when I first went live, it was under review. So it actually probably posted at some point during this live stream. So you can go to our TikTok channel at WalterPicks to see a bunch of players that fit this list. But a few that come to my head immediately. Michael Thomas. If you're 3-0 or 2-1 in your fantasy league, go get Michael Thomas. I go live every single Thursday night, every single Sunday morning. I'm live basically Sunday morning from the time I wake up to kickoff. And Thursday night, I go live for like the hour and a half, 2 hours before kickoff. I think that the guy to really look out, though, for is Michael Thomas. And, man, I can't wait for Michael Thomas to return. I think the soonest he can return is week 7, which, that's only 4 weeks away, and really not that far away for Michael Thomas. But another guy that I can't wait to come back, Jerry Jeudy. Man, Jerry Jeudy was the lock of the season in the 7th round, and he really has been tough. It's been a tough season for him in getting injured in the first game. He was pretty clearly the slot receiver for the Broncos in that first game. He looked like their number 1 receiver, and I think he's going to be really good when he comes back. Jamar Chase, over 73.5 receiving yards. Honestly, I think this is a tough number for Jamar Chase to hit with the volume that he's seeing, but against the Jaguars, definitely possible. He could easily do this in just 2 catches. That's how bad the Jaguars are and how good Jamar Chase has been deep down the field. So I don't hate it, but I think it's a pretty safe line. I actually like Marvin Jones over 65.5 receiving yards more than Jamar Chase over 73.5. But I do like both guys tonight. If you are looking for that 65.5 prop for Marvin Jones, head over to PrizePicks, use the code Walter if you haven't signed up yet, and you will get a 100% deposit bonus. Nothing better than 100% deposit bonuses. All right, trade Scary Terry for AJ Brown only if you are 3-0. I think it's the only reason you could do this, because again, AJ Brown's out. He's going to miss this week. He's probably going to miss next week too. So he could miss as many as 3 weeks. He actually could get placed on IR in the next 2 days. Like, that's very possible. It's also possible he only misses 1 week. And if he only misses 1 week, then it's a good trade. You're just betting on injury luck, though, with AJ Brown. And if you're 3-0, then that's a fine bet to make because he will come back. But he's definitely better than Terry McLaurin when he comes back. But if you're 1-2 or 0-3, then this is not the trade to make. I think your record actually really matters with trades like these. All right. Pick my RB1, 2, and flex, man. Pick 3. James Robinson, Taylor, Edmonds, Tyler Lockett. Yeah, I mean, the flex obviously has to be Tyler Lockett. I would go Jonathan Taylor, and I'd probably go with James Robinson. I'm not loving the matchup for Chase Edmonds this week against the Rams. Deebo Samuel or Chuba Hubbard. Man, this is a tough one, Sam Borgel. I would probably go Chuba Hubbard for the floor Deebo Samuel for the ceiling. I feel like I say this a lot throughout the week, but Chuba Hubbard's going to go over 10 fantasy points this week, and he's going to get like 70 to 80% of what Christian McCaffrey gets. And that's more than most running backs in the NFL. So you got to like Chuba Hubbard a lot this week. I do like Deebo Samuel a lot. He was actually just off of my top 10 wide receiver list. I think he's number 11. So, I mean, the ceiling is there for Deebo Samuel. He still has the second most receiving yards in the NFL. I would probably lean him for the ceiling. If this was my team, I'd probably go for the ceiling. But Chuba Hubbard's the guy that I would go for if you're looking for just locking in at least 10 fantasy points. Dak or Tannehill and Amari or James Robinson? Yeah, it's Dak and Amari. You got to keep stacking Dak and Amari together. It's going to work out. It's going to end up working out for you. If you keep stacking Dak and Amari, they're going to win you weeks. Robert Woods. All right. We are done with the TikTok live. We are live on YouTube now, as always, to end the stream. And it looks like my post was posted, so that's exciting. While I was live, McLaren or Myers? I would probably go with Jacoby Myers. In this situation, it's close. I think Terry McLaren's still a really safe bet. But again, I like Jacoby Myers a lot this week against the Buccaneers. Their secondary is really, really a weakness. That's why they just signed Richard Sherman. I'm nervous about. I would be nervous about Richard Sherman like maybe 5 years ago. He was not good the last time he played. I think Jacoby Myers is going to have a really good week. And Jacoby Myers has not really come off the field for the Patriots, but neither is Terry McLaurin. And we saw Terry McLaurin have a good week 2 with Taylor Heineke. He's gotten over 10 fantasy points in each of the first 3 weeks. I think Terry McLaurin probably has the safer floor, but I would argue that Jacoby Myers actually has the higher ceiling this week. Again, Jacoby Myers is the 5th highest deep target rate in the NFL. All right, Odell or Boyd at flex. I would probably lean towards Odell Beckham Jr. over Tyler Boyd. Odell saw 9 targets last week in his first game back. Hey, Sam, should I trade CeeDee Lamb for Tyreek Hill? Yeah, I would do that. I like both a ton, Miles, but I like Tyreek Hill more than CeeDee Lamb. Renfro or Moss? I would probably lean towards Moss over Renfro. Renfro has been good, Jake, but Moss has been better in the last couple of weeks. He scored 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. Full PPR, Woods, Antonio Brown, Pittman, or Emmanuel Sanders. Full PPR is good context here. I'd probably go Antonio Brown, honestly. I think hashtag revenge game against the Patriots, the 10 days he played for the Patriots. But yeah, Antonio Brown's ceiling is way higher than all 4 of these guys. So I would go Antonio Brown. You worried about starting Sony this week? Yeah, John, I'm worried about starting Sony, and I'm worried about starting Darrell Henderson because it's just so hard to know what that backfield split's going to be now. That Sony Michel had that one game. He looked good. Yeah, he didn't look great. He looked good. And he's not going to play as little as he was playing before the Darrell Henderson injury. So honestly, they might both be kind of cannibalizing each other moving forward. It'll be really interesting to see because Darrell Henderson was seeing a lot of volume before he got hurt. So I'm nervous about both of them. Definitely probably more nervous about Sony Michel, though. Would you trade Najee Harris for Jonathan Taylor? I don't think I would. I think Jonathan Taylor's a really good buy low candidate right now. He's definitely a guy that is worth sending some trade offers for. But I think Najee Harris is too much to give up, especially in a PPR league, Max. Najee Harris had 14 catches in week 4. I mean, just insane. That was the most in the NFL. That was the most in the NFL in week 4. Week 3. So I think you got it. You got to love that from Najee Harris so far this season. Najee Harris, if you just look at number of receptions this season, I mean, he's the highest running back on the list. He's the most catches among running backs. He has more catches in one game than most running backs have the entire season. Pittman, Renfro, or Tyler Boyd. Yeah, this one's probably Tyler Boyd. I think this one's Tyler Boyd. Renfro, definitely you can't be starting over Tyler Boyd, Blake. And Pittman's close, but Tyler Boyd against the Jaguars. The Jaguars have given up at least 10 points to every single receiver they've played. So I would probably go Tyler Boyd. All right. Did I lose this trade? Let's take a look after this question. Barkley, Elliott, or Monty? It's the first 2. I like Monty a lot, but it's the first 2 for sure. All right. Let me see if we lost this trade. James Robinson and TJ Hawkinson for Corey Davis and Antonio Gibson. Depending on your tight end situation, I mean, you really don't want to be trading away any of the top tight ends. So if you don't have Kyle Pitts, Noah Fant, Darren Waller, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, then yeah, this was probably a bad trade for you because your tight end's going to put up less than 10 points almost every single week. But if you have a good tight end, then I don't hate it because I don't love James Robinson. I think Corey Davis is going to bounce back, and Tony Gibson's a running back too. Definitely better than James Robinson. So I think it's fair if you have a good tight end. If you don't, though, good luck scraping by a tight end for the rest of the season. Which one? Antonio Brown, Pittman, Devonta Smith, or Chuba Hubbard? Man, this one's tough. Again, Chuba Hubbard definitely is the safest floor here. Like I've said all stream, 80%, 75% of Christian McCaffrey's better than 100% of most other running backs in the NFL. Hubbard's going to go over 10 points this week. But Devonta Smith and Antonio Brown have a really, really high ceiling. I wouldn't play Pittman over those other three guys, though. I would lean towards Hubbard if you want the floor. If you want the ceiling, I would probably go Devonta Smith. Trade Antonio Gibson for Jonathan Taylor or Joe Mixon. Yeah, I would honestly probably do it for both, Thomas, but Joe Mixon's way above both these guys. Joe Mixon has the second most carries and the second most rushing yards in the NFL, only behind Derrick Henry. But he's seeing more receiving work than Derrick Henry. He really has dominated this season. And Joe Mixon's going to dominate again tonight. He is not coming off the field for the Bengals. He's a third highest snap rate in the NFL. Giovanni Bernard is gone too, so that's what's giving him more receiving work than he's seen in his entire career. He's had only the 19th most fantasy points per game, though, because he really hasn't found the end zone. He only has one touchdown. That's going to change with this amount of volume. So, yeah, I'd like Joe Mixon to score a touchdown tonight. I think Joe Mixon is the best of these three running backs moving forward for the rest of the season. PPR, sit one, Pittman Jr., Golladay, or Zach Moss. Man, you want to sit Golladay, but if he's playing, and I think he picked up an injury, but if he's playing, then I probably would sit Zach Moss. If he's not playing, then, definitely Zach Moss. Sermon or Patterson? I would definitely go Patterson. Sutton, Evans, Julio. This is a good one, man. I would probably go. You can't start Julio Jones right now. You just can't because who knows how much he's even going to play. He's been limited in practice so far to start the week. He's going to be limited probably in practice every practice this season. I would probably go Mike Evans over Cortland Sutton. Again, I think the Buccaneers are going to have a huge passing day. Mike Evans has been really good back-to-back games. I know Antonio Brown was out last week, but even with Antonio Brown week 2, Mike Evans had a much better day. And the Patriots are going to have problems covering all three of these receivers. I like Mike Evans probably the most. Just saw the TikTok. Let me see. And now I'm torn. Amari, Devonta Smith, and Marvin Jones in a half PPR. Need to pick 2. Yeah, I think I had Devonta Smith and Marvin Jones in that one. But I would start Amari Cooper over both of them, Dan. So I think really the question is Devonta Smith or Marvin Jones. And I actually do like Devonta Smith a little bit more than Marvin Jones this week. I think Marvin Jones, his prop line is probably going to be a little bit higher than Devonta Smith. So people probably disagree with me on this one. Marvin Jones is definitely safer than Devonta Smith, Marvin Jones. He's gone over 55 receiving yards. He's gone over not 8 targets, I think, in 8 plus receptions, 8 plus targets, and 55 plus yards in all 3 games this season. That's not something you can say about Devonta Smith. So he's definitely safer, but I still like Devonta Smith's ceiling a little bit more than Marvin Jones. So I would probably go Devonta Smith. But if you're going for the safest bet, then it's Marvin Jones. All right. Hey, Sam, AB, Devonta Smith. AB, Devonta Smith, Sanders, or Madison as my flex. I'd probably if Dalvin Cook doesn't play, then it's 100% it's Madison. And by the way, we smashed on that last week too. Madison was the guy who was most confident in all those backup running backs, and he clearly was the safest play of all those backup running backs last week. But if Dalvin Cook doesn't play, it's got to be Madison. If he does play, though, it's Devonta Smith for me over Antonio Brown. Do I look to trade CEH and Gibson away? If so, for who? Yeah, Jackson, go see how much Joe Mixon costs. I know he plays tonight, so it's probably might be too late to go get him. But if you can't get Joe Mixon, I think there's a lot of good running back trade targets to go for right now, one of which is Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor. I think both those guys are pretty good targets. I think that CH and Gibson, I think Clyde especially, like you're probably selling low on Clyde if you're selling him still right now. He's seeing very good opportunity behind the best offense in the NFL. I think that Antonio Gibson is honestly the one I would look to trade away after a game with a huge catch. Cordarrelle Patterson, Michael Pittman, or Julio for flex. Oh, God. Can't believe Cordarrelle Patterson's in these questions. It's only week 4, and he's just dominating. He's got over 10 fantasy points every single week. You can't start Julio Jones, and Julio Jones could easily have a big day for the Titans against the Jets, but Julio Jones is dealing with injuries, and that's the one thing you got to be scared about for Julio Jones. Michael Pittman, on the other hand, Paris Campbell is going to be returning this week. He has an okay matchup against the Dolphins, but he's probably going to be covered by Xavier Howard, which is not what you want for Michael Pittman. So I honestly, I'm leaning towards saying Cordarrelle Patterson for this one, which I don't feel good about. I don't want to start Cordarrelle Patterson over either of these guys, but this is what it's come to, and it's only week 4. Sorry for spam, Travis. It's all good, man. But should I trade Gibson and Thielen for Derrick Henry and Ayuk? Yes, 1,000%. Yes, Derrick Henry is by far the best player in this trade, and Ayuk is worse than Thielen, but how worse? It's probably closer than people think. So I would probably do this trade. Definitely, Derrick Henry's a huge step up from Gibson. Trade D-Hop and Clyde for Diggs and Carson. Yeah, I would do this one too. DeAndre Hopkins has been disappointing so far this season. He's going to turn it around for sure, and you're probably selling him at a bad point. But Stephon Diggs is a top 5 wide receiver, like 1,000% for the rest of the season. I like him a lot more than DeAndre Hopkins right now. DeAndre Hopkins is seeing significantly less air yards than Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs first in air yards in the NFL. DeAndre Hopkins 54th in air yards in the NFL. He's really not seeing any deep targets down the field because Christian Kirk is seeing those targets. And he's not seeing the screen passes either because Rondale Moore is seeing those targets. And then AJ Green is somehow really involved as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't be trusting DeAndre Hopkins as much as I expected heading into this season. I would go with Stephon Diggs over him by a lot. And so that's why, even though I like Clyde a little bit more than Carson, they're pretty close. So, yeah, I like this trade a lot. I think Stephon Diggs is the number 1 trade target for me right now. Need 3 to start this week. Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Marvin Jones, or Cortland Sutton. Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Marvin Jones, or Cortland Sutton. Need 3. Yeah, if you're going to start 3 of these guys, then bench Robert Woods, play the other 3, and enjoy Thursday Night Football with Tyler Boyd versus Marvin Jones. Lamb, Hubbard, Moore. You cannot bench CeeDee Lamb. You're not allowed to bench CeeDee Lamb ever. Think Jacobs will play today, or is it the Barber Show again? Well, not today. He's on the Raiders. The Raiders do not play today, Chris. He does play this week. I do think he's going to play this week. It feels like that's what he was trending towards, at least the last reports I read, though it's not confirmed yet. It's not confirmed. And these running back injuries really, really can linger. So we'll probably have a better feel for this on Saturday. But I would be nervous about starting him still because he's going to see around 50% of the carries. 50% of the snaps. And Kenny Drake's going to steal a lot of the receiving role. Not today, my bad. Yeah, all good. No worries, Chris. Yeah, I do think he's going to play this week, though. Tyler Boyd, Corey Davis, or Zach Moss at flex. I would go Corey Davis. I think the ceiling for Corey Davis is highest. I think the floor for Tyler Boyd is the safest. I wouldn't go Zach Moss. I'm going to keep telling people to bench Zach Moss. It's going to be true eventually. I mean, he's not seeing nearly enough work to be consistent enough to see this much fantasy points every week. Corey Davis has a really high ceiling this week against his old team, the Tennessee Titans. And Elijah Moore is out too. Corey Davis, the volume has not been turning into very much fantasy points for Corey Davis. He's actually, I think he might be leading the league in drops. I've gone back and watched these Jets games, and it just feels like he's leading the league in drops. Like so many interceptions for Zach Wilson off of Corey Davis drops. I think there's been 3 now in 3 games. But he still is seeing around like a little over 7 targets a game, and I think he's going to see even more than that as the season goes on. Though Jameson Crowder could be returning this week. I would still go Corey Davis, though, against the Titans. All right. Start Jamar Chase over Amari Cooper or Terry McLaurin? No, I wouldn't do that. Thoughts on James Robinson and Antonio Brown for Jonathan Taylor and Debo? Yeah, I would 100% do this. 100%. Jonathan Taylor is way better than James Robinson this season. He might not be doing better so far this season if you were to compare them. But rest of the season, I would 100% take Jonathan Taylor over James Robinson. And I would probably take Deebo Samuel over Antonio Brown too. So you're getting the 2 best players on the trade. So this is an easy one. This is a layup. Should I be trying to trade Allen Robinson? Yeah, it's so tough, man. I don't think you can trade him yet. I really don't. It's not a good time to trade him, obviously. It always depends what you can get. And there's very valid concerns. But I think that once Matt Nagy relinquishes himself of play calling duties, that the Bears offense really will start doing better. We saw this last season. Nagy was calling the plays. The Bears offense was trash. He stopped calling the plays, and all of a sudden the Bears offense was really good. And the Bears offense under Bill Lazor is going to be much better. And they're going to play to their team's strengths instead of literally playing to their team's weaknesses on offense. That's going to be good news for Allen Robinson. I would wait. There's going to be a time to sell Allen Robinson. Premium sub. Alex, how's it going, man? Thank you for subscribing to the WalterPicks app, man. number one way you could possibly support me, Alex. I do appreciate that. Start Julio, Sutton, or OBJ. OBJ, absence OBJ. Interesting. Yeah, OBJ versus Sutton is a really close one for me, and I hope it is close in the WalterPicks app. I'm not 100% sure. I definitely wouldn't start Julio. I think you just can't start. Julio's just way too risky. Wow. Alert for tonight's game. Carlos Hyde is a healthy scratch for tonight's game. Sorry, I want to answer this question really quick. I would honestly probably lean Sutton. I do think it's really close. And Odell did have 9 targets in his first game back, but I would probably lean Sutton, Alex. I go against the app on this one, but it is close. And I do understand why the numbers would probably suggest OBJ. But Sutton's seen a lot of air yards, man, since he's been back. Carlos Hyde declared as a healthy scratch week 4 against the Bengals. I mean, this is really good news for James Robinson. And I told a lot of people on this live stream not to start James Robinson. But Dar Agumbawale will take on the backup duties for this game. Agumbawale, capable pass catcher, contributes on special teams. But he's not going to eat into James Robinson's role nearly as much as Carlos Hyde. You got to love what this means for James Robinson. And James Robinson's over-under. Let's check out really quickly what James Robinson's over-under is on Prize Picks, because if they haven't updated with this news, that could be a very interesting one to hit, because they have over-unders on fantasy points. Over-under 15.5 for James Robinson. I do not hate that at all. Really not at all tonight. I think this is huge news for James Robinson. I really do. The James Robinson, the whole floor for James Robinson is because of Carlos Hyde seeing 40% of the work. And Agumbawale is just not going to see as much work as James Robinson does. So, yeah, I like this a lot. I would expect James Robinson to get at least 15 fantasy points now. And I think that changes a lot of my responses to the James Robinson questions. All right, flex or Sutton or CEH? Flex Sutton or CEH? Yeah, I would probably go CEH in that situation. Again, I do really think that the Chiefs are going to just dominate the Eagles this week. But if you're just tuning in, guys, actually somewhat surprising news. Carlos Hyde is a healthy scratch tonight. And I think the big takeaway here is fire up James Robinson with a lot more confidence now. I think you got to fire him up with a lot more confidence. Hi, Sam. I can start 2. Debo, Chris Godwin, CD, or Mike Williams. Debo, Chris Godwin, CD, or yeah. You can't bench the last 2. You can't bench CD Lamb or Mike Williams right now. You just can't do it. So I would start both those guys. Though I do like Chris Godwin a lot this week too. I think it's close between Godwin and Williams. But, I mean, with what Mike Williams' role looks like right now, you just can't be benching him. Let me pull up James Robinson really quickly. I want to update the WalterPicks projection, see what he's projected for now that James Robinson is playing without Carlos Hyde. See how much that changes things for the 10,000 simulations we do in the WalterPicks app every week on the iOS App Store. And when I update this, his projection jumps from 13.8 all the way up to 14.8. So it gives him about a point back. Actually, I would expect that to be more, but I guess this is projecting Agumbawale to take a lot of Carlos Hyde's work, but definitely his boom probability definitely shot up a lot. His bust percentage shot down a lot. So James Robinson is a much, much better option this week than anticipated. So you got to feel pretty good about James Robinson tonight against the Bengals. The Bengals defense has been better than expected, but volume is king, man. And with no Carlos Hyde, I think that actually does have a pretty big impact on James Robinson. And I'm just updating the app right now. All right. Getting back to some of the questions. And again, Nicholas, we do not need to spam the chat. There's only 43 of us in here right now. I'll try to get to your question, I promise. All right. Hi, Sam. Allen Robinson, Smith, Kirk, Renfro, Elijah Mitchell, 1 point PPR. Yeah, it's got to be Devonta Smith in this situation. Smith has such a high ceiling. Should I wait to trade Allen Robinson and AB for Taylor and Debo? Just worried about if Taylor has a big week, the trade might not be as popular. No, don't wait. I would definitely do that trade right now. Steelers defense versus Green Bay. Don't love it. I don't love that. Jamar Chase, over 73.5 tonight, 7:05. Talking Sports. How's it going? I do like Jamar Chase tonight. I think this is a pretty fair prop line, though. I could easily see him finishing with like 70 yards. I think that's like what Walter had him projected for. So I don't love it. I do like it. I don't love it, though. I'm not betting on it tonight. All right. Will Julio play this week? It looks like he's going to play, but I'm not feeling super confident about how much he's going to play. Defense team I should pick up for this week. Yeah, there's a couple interesting options. I think the Titans are the most interesting against the Jets. They're probably the best pickup. But I do like the Bengals tonight too against the Jaguars. Start AB or Tim Patrick this week? I would go Antonio Brown. Tim Patrick's been great, and I know that KJ Hamler's out for the season now, and that's good news for Tim Patrick. But Antonio Brown has a way, way, way higher ceiling than Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick's a pretty good sleeper this week, but Antonio Brown against the Patriots, I would go there. The Patriots secondary really has not been very impressive, though Tim Patrick's been pretty consistent. He's gone over 12 fantasy points in all 3 games, and he's seen at least 4 targets in all 3. But he scored twice, and he hasn't seen over 5 targets in a single game. So I think the floor is lower than it seems for Tim Patrick so far this season. What's your pick for the Bengals versus Jags spread? Yeah, Ethan, both my locks last week hit against the spread. Both of them hit against the spread. I'm over 54% against the spread now this season, which honestly, a lot better than I expected. I feel like picking against the spread is really difficult. And tonight, Ethan, I'm taking the Jaguars plus 7.5 against the Bengals. I think the Bengals are going to win. I could easily see the Bengals stampeding the Jaguars. But these Thursday night games, man, especially with these 2 teams, I think the Jaguars have a very real chance to win the game. I do. I'm not going to bet on them to win the game. I'm going to bet on them. It's going to be the spread. I'm not going to feel good about betting on the Jaguars. I'm not going to actually put any of my actual money on this game. As you know, I bet on player props. I don't put that much on spreads. But I do pick every spread for the hashtag for the stream. And we're over 54% accurate against the spread so far this season. And we picked every single game. And my locks, I think, are 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5 at this point. But I like the Bengals to win, but not cover the spread. Hey, Sam, who do I start? Patrick, Sanders, or Mooney? Yeah, this is one where I would definitely go Patrick. We just talked about Patrick. He's gotten over 10 points in each of the first 3 games. I do think he's not going to be that consistent this season. I think his floor is lower than that. But Sanders, after last week, is really, really, really tough to trust, especially in another game that they're probably going to be down very early in the game. And Darnell Mooney, you just can't trust the whole Bears team right now. Who's better long-term, Saquon or Swift? Oh, man. This is how good Swift has been, and that it's just so great to see. Swift is actually playing behind the better offensive line. Swift is seeing more targets, but Saquon did see 7 targets last game in his first, fully healthy game back. I would probably say Saquon over Swift the rest of the season, but it is close. It really is. And Swift is, I think, 3rd in fantasy points per game so far this season. With Hyde out, James Robinson or Jonathan Taylor. Also, does this put James Robinson in the top 10 this week? Let me pull up the top 10 again. I don't think it does, but let's just take a quick look at the top 10 running backs this week. And I'm not seeing them for some reason. I might have accidentally deleted the top 10 running backs. But I don't think it would put him in. He's projected now for 14.8 fantasy points tonight by Walter, our artificially intelligent algorithm. Jonathan Taylor, I can pull him up really quickly. I think Jonathan Taylor is projected. Take a quick look here. Yeah, he's projected 16 fantasy points. I would go Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, again, he hasn't been great this season. He's averaging only around 10 fantasy points per game, but he hasn't scored as many touchdowns as he should have. He has 0 touchdowns, but he's the 2nd most red zone touches in the NFL. So I would go Jonathan Taylor still over James Robinson, though it definitely is much closer now with Carlos Hyde not playing. Mixon, Aaron Jones, Barkley, Metcalf, pick 3. Man, this is a tough one. These are all guys that I feel like you have to start. Honestly, I think you got to find room for all 4. The guy that I'm probably least confident in, though, is DK Metcalf. I mean, the other 3 guys are just so safe that it's tough. It's between Barkley and Metcalf for me, honestly. I don't think you can bench Joe Mixon against the Jaguars. He's probably going to go over 100 yards tonight, and I don't think you can bench Aaron Jones either. So I would probably decide between Barkley and Metcalf. Hey, Sam. Sorry for the spam. 1-2 right now and looking for a win this week. Nicholas, man, no worry. We got to make sure we get your question answered, Nick, because you got to get back to 500. If you're 1-2, I'm 1-2, and I think 2 of my high stakes leagues. And man, must win week, Nick. So what's your question, man? I'll get it answered. Hey Sam, out of these players, who should I package to get a better running back to? Stafford and Lance, definitely can't trade either of those guys. Terry, DJ Moore, Ayuk, AJ Brown. Probably AJ Brown if you're trying to get a better wide receiver too. Barkley, Hubbard, Mitchell, Singletary. Yeah, honestly, I would probably look to trade AJ Brown, Chuba Hubbard. See what you can get for those two guys. Honestly, maybe I think Chuba Hubbard works really well for teams that are in win now mode, and AJ Brown works really well for teams that are like 3-0. So I would see what you can get for those guys. Definitely don't trade Darren Waller because Dawson Knox is not going to get it done. Would you trade Najee for Joe Mixon? Yes, I would. Again, Joe Mixon, was he third in? Let me pull this up. Joe Mixon is not really done it in the fantasy points per game column, but by a volume standpoint, second most carries in the NFL, second most rushing yards in the NFL, and he has a receiving role too. So I think he's ranked 19th in fantasy points per game right now, which I actually think is worse than Najee Harris because Najee Harris has scored more touchdowns. He's got a lot more passes, but I like Joe Mixon, I think, more rest of season. It is close, yeah. Najee Harris, 7th most fantasy points per game. That's a pretty big difference, honestly. Maybe I'm wrong about this one, and Najee Harris is better than Mixon for fantasy purposes. But the volume is definitely going Mixon's way. The targets, though, are going Najee Harris's way. If it's PPR, honestly, it's probably Najee Harris. If it's not, if it's half PPR or standard, then it's probably Joe Mixon. What do you think is good value for trading away Chuba? Anything that's going to be a good starter for you rest of the season. Because Chuba Hubbard's just going to be good for the next 2, maybe 3 weeks. Need a win this week, Sam. How's it going? First, Robbie Anderson question that I've seen. I actually think Robbie Anderson's going to have a big week this week. I've been against him almost every week so far. He really hasn't been good so far. I do think it could be a big Robbie Anderson week. I would go with him or Antonio Brown. I think one of those two guys is probably going to win you the week. I think both are going to have big weeks. I would personally lean towards Antonio Brown a little bit more than Robbie Anderson, but it's close. I think Antonio Brown's going to have a huge, huge ceiling. What to do with Zeke? Yeah, I mean, hold on to him, man. Zeke has insane touchdown upside, really, really high touchdown ceiling for Ezekiel Elliott this week. Guys, I got time for 2 final questions. Then we're going to wrap up the stream. Thanks for tuning in. As always, it's been a very, very fun stream. All right, Max, is your first name really the same as your last name? That would be crazy. Max. Calvin Ridley for Antonio Gibson. It's a fair trade. I would prefer Calvin Ridley over Antonio Gibson, though. Edmonds or Darrell Henderson. I'm so nervous about Darrell Henderson coming back after his injury. It feels like it makes a lot of sense for the Rams to include Sony Michel much more than they were before the Darrell Henderson injury. I would still probably go with Edmonds this week, even though I think Darrell Henderson is probably going to be better rest of the season. I just don't want to play Darrell Henderson coming off this injury. He seems like such a big question mark to me this week. Edmonds, I don't love against the Rams either. But what's Mitchell's value? Flip a coin. That's what his value is. Honestly, like it's so hard to know what the volume is going to be like in the 49ers backfield. I think it's going to be Mitchell starting at running back for the 49ers as soon as this week. But it could easily end up being Sermon this week or next week or the week after that. So that's what Mitchell's value is. He's like going to be this inconsistent running back too. Tannehill or Carr? Man, with no A.J. Brown, with an injured Julio Jones, I don't know how you don't go Derek Carr. Derek Carr is leading the league in passing yards. It's just absolutely insane. I don't think it's even close. If I pull this up really quickly, this will be a good one to end on. I do hope I got to almost everyone's questions. Yeah, Derek Carr has almost 200 more yards than the next highest. He has 1,200 passing yards. There's only 3 players over 1,000. He has almost 200 more passing yards than every other quarterback in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. Just insane start for Derek Carr, man. He's really proved a lot of people wrong to start this season. Hawkinson or Boyd in the flex. Man, Nicholas, trade one of your tight ends. You don't want to start 2 tight ends each week. You really don't. I would honestly go with Boyd over Hawkinson. I think Hawkinson and Boyd are probably projected really similarly for Walter, but I would go Boyd. Boyd or Jamar in DraftKings. Jamar is the higher ceiling. And Caleb, if you're playing in the tournament, you got to go Jamar. You almost have to go Jamar in the tournament. If it's head-to-head, then I'm much more inclined to go Tyler Boyd. All right, Ethan, last question of the night, man. Chuba Hubbard, Robert Woods, Marquise Brown, Elijah Mitchell, pick 2. Yeah, it's definitely Chuba Hubbard, and it's probably Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown's been really good, and Rashad Bateman's coming back soon. So I think this is one of the final weeks to really be able to trust Marquise Brown, who's been the go-to guy for Lamar, and he's dropped a couple really, really big passes, but he has still been a lot better than people expected this season, and he's seeing a massive, massive air yard share. He has seen, if I pull this up really quickly, almost 8 targets a game. He's almost seen 8 targets a game. He's gone over 15 fantasy points in 2 out of his 3 games. I'd probably go Marquise Brown here. It's close, though. After Chuba Hubbard, I think it's all 3 of those guys are really close. And we got to wait till game time for Elijah Mitchell to see what that workload is going to look like. But he's going to be a complete coin flip. I'd probably go Marquise Brown. But Robert Woods, he's due for a big bounce back game, too. I think this one's really close. I would argue that Marquise Brown's the best floor ceiling combination of those 3 guys left. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Hit the like and subscribe button. Enjoy the game tonight. We're rooting for Marvin Jones, Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase. But overall, we're going to be having a lot of fun watching this Bengals, Jaguars, Thursday night football. Nothing says Thursday night like the Jaguars versus the Bengals. Guys, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back live Sunday morning, as always. Have a good rest of your night.